Chapter 239. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have ended up like this. The Sacred Hall. Song Ming grabbed Mu Jitsong's sleeve firmly. His eyes were bloodshot. He was completely done for. Although the Golden Pheasant Elder did not punish him in the end, his seniors and juniors all avoided him like wolves or tigers. Even the outer disciples who often hung out with him stopped talking to him. He had completely become a loner on the Pheasant's Grace Mountain. Mu Jitsong shook off his hand impatiently. Senior Brother Song, weren't you the one who wanted revenge? Was I the one who forced you to do it? Why, I'm in pain, but don't you think you'll have it easy either. Song Ming no longer possessed any of his elegant and refined bearing. Spittle flew everywhere as he raised his hand and swung it at Mu Jitsong like a madman. You've lost your mind. Mu Jitsong shivered inside and retreated in a hurry. Although he avoided the palm strike, his chest still ached from the true qi. Song Ming wanted to pursue him, but green vines emerged from the ground and wrapped around him firmly. He waved his hand, and a golden pheasant's plume appeared. Mu Jitsong called out, "Don't forget, this is the Green Vine Mountain." Outside the window, there were green trees and red flowers like it was spring or summer. However, when he gazed out further, it was hazy clouds and snowy mountains. This was the residence for inner disciples on the Green Vine Mountain, Mu Jitsong's room. Song Ming's heart shuddered. He slowly calmed down and stowed the golden pheasant's plume away. Mu Jitsong dispersed the green vines and patted Song Ming's shoulder. He tried to persuade him. The 3 mountains have already issued a warrant for your arrest. At the very least, you'll be able to avenge yourself, senior brother. There are no obstacles in the world that you can't overcome. As long as you perform well during the herb gathering ceremony, you'll definitely be able to regain Master's favor. Who knows, you might even find some spiritual herbs underground and consume them. Your cultivation will skyrocket, and you'll become the new first senior brother. Mu Jitsong was afraid that he would really offend Song Ming and force him into a corner, so he tried to persuade him. Song Ming emerged from the residence with a deathly stillness. Under a great camphor tree, Ma Chaochuan bowed towards him. "Senior brother!" Slap! There was a resounding slap. Ma Chaochuan crashed heavily into the camphor tree, its leaves falling to the ground. Song Ming said fiercely, "You dare to laugh at me?" Ma Chaochuan said, "I wouldn't dare. This all happened because of me. I've let you down, senior brother. If you want to beat or scold me, do as you please. Sanctuary." Song Ming was a little surprised and said with a cold smile, "With your little cultivation, you're worthy of letting me down? Since you dare to come over and talk to me, you can be considered a man. As expected of someone from the Jianghu, you have a bit of loyalty." After he finished speaking, he lifted his leg and walked away. After a few steps, he suddenly turned his head and said, "In the future, you will follow me. If anyone in the outer sect dares to bully you, just tell me." Senior brother? Ma Chaochuan was stunned. "You could endure for 20 years for revenge. Do you think I can't compare to you? I want to let them see that I, Song Ming, am not trash that can be bullied by anyone." Mu Jitsong watched the 2 of them disappear into the shadowy path. He murmured to himself, "I never thought this Song Ming would have some backbone." Then he murmured, "Niu Juxia." He had never thought this man could actually escape from the encirclement of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, and he had even killed the first senior brother of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain. He basically doubted whether this was some scheme or not. He found it very unbelievable. Was this guy really that powerful? If he came for revenge, what was he supposed to do? In a daze, the tall figure appeared before him, casting a shadow that enveloped him. However, Mu Jitsong immediately shook his head. Even if that Nyo Jusha guy racked his brains, he would never be able to imagine his role in all of this. And he was wanted by the three mountains. His life would be in danger, let alone revenge. Thinking up to there, Mu Jitsong stood up and made his way out, making his way towards the region where the outer sect disciples resided. Chenglu, is what you said true? Is Nyo Juxiao really wanted by the three mountains? Why didn't anyone tell me? Yu Zijian paced around in the room anxiously. You're under house arrest right now, so of course no one would tell you. I heard he killed the first senior brother of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, and he's being hunted down by the Golden Pheasant Elder. Stop pacing around. It's making me dizzy. Then what happened to him? Yu Zijian suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened in fright, and a layer of mist clouded her face. Her eyeballs had already begun to roll around. If it weren't for me, Nyo Jusha wouldn't have fallen out with the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, and he wouldn't have come to the Green Vine Mountain, and he wouldn't have… Idiot! Of course he escaped. Otherwise, why would he be wanted? Compared to others, you better worry about yourself. Just now, Yu Zijian stopped worrying. She prayed silently, Nyo Jusha, please be fine. Miss Hua's words make sense. A voice rang out from outside. Mu Jitsong strode into the courtyard and stood with his hands behind his back. He seemed extraordinarily graceful under the mottled shade. Yu Zijian said, Senior brother Mu. Mu Jitsong said, Zijian, the herb gathering ceremony is right around the corner. Although I'll take care of you when the time comes, you still need to make some preparations. Zijian isn't a disciple of the Green Vine Mountain. I won't be taking part in your shitty herb gathering ceremony. Hurry up and piss off. I hate the people of the Green Vine Mountain whenever I see them now. Hua Qinglu suddenly sat up from the chair and cursed. Hua Qinglu had come to the Green Vine Mountain to pay a visit to the Green Vine Mountain and wanted to take Yu Zijian away. The Green Vine Elder only managed to meet her once before directly turning down her request. Although she liked to act very mature, she was still a young girl at the end of the day. If the patriarch of the Hua family or Hua Sengzan had come, this would not have been difficult at all. However, if a single word from a young girl forced the Green Vine Mountain to release her obediently, it would seem like they were afraid of the Hua family. The Green Vine Elder could not afford to be humiliated like that. Hua Qinglu obviously refused to give up. She forcefully stayed on the mountain with Yu Zijian. After staying here for a while, she began to feel restless as well. She could no longer afford to act mature anymore. She unleashed her unruly and willful attitude of a young lady from a large clan. Miss Hua, don't think you can run your mouth like this just because you're a member of the Hua family. Do you really think I'm afraid of teaching you a lesson? Mu Jitsong's face reddened as he raised his hand. Hua Qinglu raised her head. Come on, teach me a lesson if you have the ability. You're a coward if you don't. Mu Jitsong was utterly furious, but his hand hovered in the air. He really was afraid to strike. Once he struck, it would lead to a conflict between the Green Vine Mountain and the Hua family. Even he could not afford to bear this responsibility. Yu Zijian stood between the two of them in a hurry. Stop arguing. Mu Jitsong used this as an excuse to back down. He lowered his hand viciously. If it weren't for Zijian's protection, I'd definitely teach a lesson to an ignorant girl like you. Do you want to teach a lesson to? A voice rang out from outside. Brother. Hua Qinglu leapt up from the chair. Mu Jitsong turned around in a hurry and saw an extremely handsome man sitting on a slender verdant branch, swaying in the wind. His long, ebony hair draped over his shoulders as he smiled like peach blossoms. If it were not for the distinct Adam's apple in his throat, he probably would have been mistaken for a supreme beauty. Hearing how Hua Qinglu referred to him, a name suddenly leapt out of Mu Jitsong's head, Hua Sengzan. There were countless geniuses in the 1,500 kilometers of Clear River Prefecture, but this person was the best of the best, a true prodigy. Not only did he come from a renowned clan, but he was also handsome. He was the only Scarlet Wolf commander in the entire Rui Commandery who was not at Foundation establishment. This was not because of his connection to the Hua family or the White Hawk commander's recruitment. Instead, it was because he had reached the 10th layer before the age of 20. Everyone believed he would become the youngest Foundation establishment cultivator in the Clear River Prefecture very soon. Although he had been stuck at the 10th layer for many years, which made his reputation as a genius dim slightly, he was still a dazzling existence to regular Qi practitioners. He was known as the greatest below Foundation establishment in the Clear River Prefecture. Mu Jitsong bowed in a hurry. I didn't know Commander Hua was coming, so I failed to welcome you. Let alone the Hua family. Just Hua Sengzan's identity as a Scarlet Wolf commander was enough to strike fear into the hearts of any Qi practitioner. In the eyes of these sects and cultivators, the Hawkwolf Guard was not some righteous emissary who upheld the law and the law. Instead, they were the hawks and dogs of the empire that concocted crimes and punished them severely. Hua Qinglu ran over to the bottom of the tree and stamped her foot. Why have you only come now? Zijian and I have already been bullied to death here. Mu Jitsong smiled dryly. I was just joking with your sister. Then I'll joke with you too. Hua Sengzan's face sank, and he raised his hand. He wielded great authority in the Clear River Prefecture, who knew how many Qi practitioners he had killed and interrogated in the past. Although he did not seem awe-inspiring normally, once his face grew cold, his sternness seemed to bring the spring scene to late autumn. Mu Jitsong staggered a few steps back and tripped over the chair, falling on his bottom. He raised his hand to cover his face like a woman and cried out, "No!" But nothing happened afterwards. Mu Jitsong lowered his hand, only to see Hua Sengzan sitting there with a smile on his face. Just now, his bearing seemed like an illusion. Hua Qinglu sneered. What a coward! My elder brother already said it was a joke. Mu Jitsong's face reddened. He felt both humiliated and fearful. Earlier, he had been completely overwhelmed by Hua Sengzan's bearing. Not only was he unable to put up a fight, but he had even lost the courage to run away. All he could do was kneel on the ground and beg for mercy, allowing himself to be slaughtered. If Hua Sengzan had struck back then, killing him would have been no different from killing an ordinary person. Before he had even used a single move, he had already suffered a crushing defeat. Senior brother Mu. Yu Zijian wanted to help him up, but Mu Jitsong had already leapt up himself. He said, I'll go report this to Master. He rushed out the door. Hua Qinglu called out, Why don't you get down here? Hua Sengzan was helpless. He drifted down from the tree gently and smiled at Yu Zijian. Miss you, long time no see. Yu Zijian lowered her head in a hurry. Big brother Hua, why have you come? Hua Qinglu said complacently, I obviously told him to come. However, Hua Sengzan said at the same time, I've come for some business. The two of them exchanged glances. Hua Qinglu pinched his nose furiously. So it's not for me. Hua Sengzan sighed. Of course it's for you. I told you not to come to the Green Vine Mountain in such a hurry and wait for me to deal with it. It's instead become difficult now. The minds of people were extremely complicated. If he came now, the Green Vine Elder would probably feel like the Hua family was trying to oppress him through their influence. If it weren't for me, Zijian would have been forced to join the Green Vine Mountain already. Fair enough. Since Commander Hua has graced us with your presence, why don't you come up the mountain for a chat? Allow me to perform my duties as a host. Chapter 240. Come with me. Hua Qinglu picked up Hua Qinglu and flew out of the canopy like a bird flying towards the top of the mountain. Zijian, wait for me. Hua Qinglu turned around and called out, but all she saw was a swath of greenery. She had already traveled very far away from the courtyard. Her voice lingered, and the branches and leaves trembled. Zijian exhaled gently. If it were not for the assistance of these kind people who knew what kind of situation she would be in, regardless of the outcome, she thanked them from the bottom of her heart. If people did not possess these warm feelings, what was the point of living in this world? However, if someone were to be harmed because of her, she really had no idea what she would do. Niu Juxia, you better be fine. As they advanced through the fierce winds, the wind whistled past their ears. Hua Qinglu asked, Brother, what's your mission here? It's a secret. Hua Sengzan smiled, but his brows were rather solemn. Obviously, he could not hide this from his younger sister, Hua Qinglu. She pouted unhappily, but she did not ask any further. She wondered, apart from that woman, just what can give this omnipotent brother of hers a headache. Is it related to the herb gathering ceremony of the 3 mountains? Hua Sengzan did not reply. Suddenly, he took off into the air and overlooked the entire Green Vine Mountain. All Hua Qinglu saw was the square in front of the hall engraved with the image of the 9 palaces and 8 trigrams. Smoke curled up from the 9 3-legged bronze cauldrons. Gazing into the distance, the mountains seemed hazy, giving off a sense of otherworldliness. The Green Vine Mountain could be regarded as a rare blessed land. She saw the Green Vine elder standing with his arms behind his back, waiting in front of the hall. Many disciples of the 3 mountains had gathered on the square. Hearing the disturbance, they hurried up the mountain. Raising their heads, they saw a handsome man and a girl flying up the mountain with the wind. They were like a white crane flying over the mountains without the slightest hint of danger. The lower-level Qi practitioners did not feel anything, but the higher the level of the Qi practitioners, the more serious their expressions became. This feeling of being one with the world had only been experienced by Foundation establishment cultivators. Sure enough, he lived up to his reputation as the greatest below Foundation establishment. Hua Sengzan and Hua Qinglu landed gently on the steps. Hua Sengzan cupped his fists and said, Junior Hua Sengzan greets Elder Ivy. No matter how good one's family background was or how talented one was, this was the basic respect that a Qi warrior should have for a Foundation establishment cultivator. On the path of cultivation, the strong were revered. The Green Vine elder stroked his beard with a smile and returned half a bow. Commander, why didn't you inform me earlier? I could have come to the foot of the mountain to receive you. If that's the case, it does seem like I'm taking advantage of my seniority and treating an esteemed guest lightly. However, he secretly blamed Hua Sengzan for not paying respects to the mountain first, directly passing through the formation and climbing up the Green Vine Mountain. However, he was truly amazed by the ability to pass through the formation without making a sound. Hua Sengzan said, Because I was worried about my little sister, I panicked. Please forgive me, Senior. Xiao Mei has been disturbing you on the mountain for many days. I am afraid that my words and actions are improper. Thank you, Senior, is magnanimous and did not argue with me. Cheng Lu quickly thanked Senior. Thank you, Senior Green Vine. Hua Qinglu bowed, rather reluctantly. Hua Sengzan patted Hua Qinglu's head gently and said helplessly, My little sister is young and ignorant, and she has always been spoiled. There's nothing I can do about her, so I hope Senior doesn't take offense. Your little sister is naive and innocent, so why would I take offense? The Green Vine elder laughed aloud. Even though he was rather displeased, He could not stoop to the level of a little girl, or he would seem far too petty. Hua Sungzan resolved the conflict from the past in a few words. He smiled and clasped his hands. I still have some official matters to attend to, so I want to meet with the sect masters of the Three Mountains. This isn't a place to talk, so let's go in. At this moment, he was no longer the elder brother who apologized for his little sister, nor was he a junior who respected his senior. Instead, he was the commander of the Hawkwolf Guard, representing the dignity of the law. He naturally treated him as an equal, even taking the upper hand and taking control of the situation. The Green Vine elder could not help but become stern. He raised his hand. Please. He could not help but sigh inside. This child is graceful and composure in handling matters. He's actually much better than all of his disciples. He's worthy of great responsibility. If a disciple like him could inherit the legacy, would the Green Vine Mountain not prosper? Hua Sungzan made Hua Chenglu wait outside. When the Green Vine elder entered the hall and was about to enter, he suddenly turned around and glanced past every single face on the square. Afterwards, he became slightly disappointed. He mocked himself inside. If that person could appear here so easily, then I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. As expected, the Golden Pheasant Elder and the Lone Grave Elder were already seated in the hall. When they saw Hua Sungzan walk in, they stood up slightly before sitting down again. Their eyes were filled with caution. They wanted to maintain their dignity as sect masters, but they also did not want to offend the Hawkwolf Guard. Hua Sungzan seemed to have already grown accustomed to this treatment. He only clasped his hands and did not act like a junior. What orders do you have for us, Commander? The Green Vine elder dismissed all of his disciples. Only the 4 of them were left in the large hall. Their voices echoed through the hall, and the vermilion pillars seemed to extend into the darkness. It seemed extremely lonely. Hua Sungzan pondered as he paced around. He seemed to be organizing his words, but he also seemed to be thinking about something. Suddenly, he stopped and said, I've come to warn the 3 of you. Someone is coming to take over the 3 mountains. The 3 of you need to be prepared. What? The Green Vine elder was surprised. Your S-, the Golden Pheasant elder, directly leapt to his feet. He had been in an extremely horrible mood these past few days, so vulgarities slipped out of his mouth. He only managed to stop himself halfway through. Oh! The Lone Grave elder rolled his eyes. Many expressions immediately appeared on his corpse-like face. The Green Vine elder lowered his eyes. Don't be an alarmist, Commander. Our alliance of the 3 mountains has existed for several generations. It's a 1,000-year foundation, so how can it be taken over so easily? The Golden Pheasant elder waved his hands about violently. With the 3 of us working together, who do we have to be afraid of? Don't tell me Commander Gu of the White Hawk has taken an interest in our foundation? That's right, said the Lone Grave elder. Their confidence was not without reason. Great Xia had been established for several thousand years, and the situation across the 9 provinces was peaceful. There were not even many conflicts between sections. Although there were some undercurrents, the 3 foundation establishment cultivators could basically fend them off if they worked together. Golden Core cultivators were obviously not people they could fend off, but all Golden Core cultivators came from large clans and businesses. So why would they take an interest in the 3 mountains? And the Hawkwolf Guard had never interfered with the conflicts between sections. They would rather fan the flames. So why would they be so kind as to inform them? Hua Sungzan purposefully fell silent for a while, giving the 3 of them enough time to respond. Only then did he say, This person comes from the Sword Collection Palace. The 3 agitated old men seemed to be choked by an invisible hand at the same time. They were rendered speechless, unable to say anything at all. The Sword Collection Palace was a great sect renowned across the entire Green Province. It was said that only those who had reached foundation establishment had the right to become inner disciples. To all the smaller and medium-sized sects of the Green Province, this was an undefeatable name. After quite a while, the Golden Pheasant Elder was the first to return to his senses. He bellowed, "You're lying! The Sword Collection Palace is a righteous sect. So why would they attack other sects so easily? What do we have that's worth their attention?" The Green Vine Elder smiled bitterly. "If you're not joking, Commander, we can go prepare to change our allegiance. How are we supposed to contend against the Sword Collection Palace?" The lone Grave Elder's face darkened. His body had already tensed up, making him seem more and more like a corpse. Hua Sungzan said, "Not attack, but control and recruitment? Actually, there's no need for the three of you to worry too much. I've received accurate information that the person who has come is only an inner disciple of the Sword Collection Palace. He's only undergone the heavenly tribulation recently. This is the first time he has left the mountain for training. As long as the three of you defeat him, there'll obviously be nothing to worry about." The three old men looked at one another. A disciple of the Sword Collection Palace had actually come to deal with them. This was utterly humiliating, but they just could not get angry, as this was the Sword Collection Palace. As a matter of fact, they even felt slightly relieved. If he was just an early Foundation establishment cultivator, would they still have to worry about not being able to deal with him with their cultivations? Hua Sungzan shook his head inside. The knowledge of people from sects was still limited to stories passed down by word of mouth at the end of the day. It was impossible for them to analyze things as clearly and in detail as the Hawkwolf Guard. Hua Qinglu sat in front of the hall, hugging her knees. No matter who tried to talk to her, she would say viciously, "Piss off." Just as she was bored from waiting, Hua Sungzan emerged from the hall. The sect masters of the Three Mountains personally came to see him off. This kind of courteous treatment surprised all the disciples in the square. The eyes of the female cultivators even lit up. If they wanted to choose a partner, they just happened to need a man like him. If it were in the past, perhaps Hua Sungzan would have smiled at them and spread his reputation as a promiscuous playboy. But right now, he was not in the mood to do that. He was still worried, so he said sternly, "I'll be in the town below the mountain. If he appears, send someone to contact me. By then, the three of you will definitely have to work together against him, or the Three Mountains will be in danger." He was clearly saying that if they fought one by one, they would not be able to defeat a disciple of the Sword Collection Palace. If the Golden Pheasant Elder heard that normally, he definitely would have cursed aloud, but right now he seemed very cautious. He nodded. After listening to Hua Sungzan's analysis, they no longer dared to underestimate him at all. Compared to their pride, the foundations of the Three Mountains were more important. The Sword Collection Palace was impressive, but everyone understood the principle of being the head of a chicken rather than the tail of a cow. Just what does the Sword Collection Palace want? Who knew how many years it had been since the lone Grave Elder had spoken so much? He stuttered as he spoke. This was also the question that the Green Vine Elder and Golden Pheasant Elder wanted to ask the most. Just what did they possess that could catch the attention of a large sect thousands of kilometers away? Hua Sungzan hesitated. As for what he wants, I can't say. However, no matter what request he has, you must not agree to it, or the world will be in danger. The three elders looked at one another. Although they each ruled over a region, they still had an extremely clear understanding of their own capabilities. Even if the Three Mountains worked together, they probably would not be able to influence the world at all. That was a little too alarmist, so they wanted to ask a few more questions. Hua Sungzan clasped his hands and made his way down the stairs, flying off with Hua Chunlu. They flew over the sea of trees, and even flew over the residences of the outer disciples. Hua Chunlu asked in a hurry, "Where's Zijian? Where's Zijian?" Hua Sengzan said, "Don't fret. Once I'm done with my matters, I'll obviously take you back to Clear River City." He was in no hurry to ask the Green Vine Elder for her. He would only ask when he felt confident, and when he asked, they definitely would not turn him down. Of course, it would be best if he did not even have to ask. If he succeeded, the Green Vine Elder would probably thank him for his warning. There would be no need for him to say anything, and he would just send Yu Zijian off the mountain. There was no need for him to be in such a hurry. Hua Chunlu said, "But the herb gathering ceremony is right around the corner. Who knows how dangerous it will be for Zijian to go underground with them?" Hua Sengzan said, "Can't you see that there's already someone who's willing to take care of her? There won't be any danger. It's actually a good thing." But no buts. If there were danger, there wouldn't be so many Qi practitioners going underground. It'll be fine as long as they don't go too deep. We've been on the Green Vine Mountain for so long, so how can we leave without making some profits? Hua Sengzan seemed to think of something. He muttered to himself, "In terms of danger, I'd be more worried about the demons." "What?" Hua Chunlu asked in confusion. "Nothing." The greenery dispersed, and the wind and snow blew over. Below the Green Vine Mountain, the town was currently at its busiest. The herb gathering ceremony was right around the corner, so almost 1,000 Qi practitioners had gathered here. All of them wanted to make some last-minute preparations. This was the busiest time for trade. But at this moment, the ruckus outside the northern entrance of the town had fallen silent. A wide path had been opened up on the jostling streets, allowing a group of Qi practitioners to pass through. The person in the lead was Wu General. His scarlet clothes were eye-catching, while the black robes of the commanders behind him fluttered in the wind. They were dignified and somber. "Why has the Hawkwolf Guard come here? Don't tell me they're also participating in the herb gathering ceremony. Surely not. There's never been a precedent like this." Wu Zhen's face was so sunken that it seemed like it was about to drip water. He made his way into an inn quickly, and the commanders behind him entered as well. Their faces were all ugly. The owner of the inn went up to receive him with a bow. "Sir Wu, you've finally returned. Please come in. I've even saved the best room for you." Wu Zhen said, "Close the door." The owner said, "I still have business to do." "Close the door." Wu Zhen's voice became even deeper. The owner closed the door in a hurry. Wu Zhen cursed aloud. "You're all a bunch of trash. You can't even catch an injured person. Every single one of you looks impressive, but you're useless. How am I supposed to report back?" The door upstairs slowly opened up a crack. Seeing a group of Hawkwolf guards below, he immediately shut the door tightly. Fang and Shang said, "Senior brother, the terrain underground is complicated. The caverns crisscross with one another. There's nothing we can do if we can't find him." The other commanders nodded in agreement. Qiu Ruelio's cave was not just a short, secret tunnel. Instead, it was directly connected to the underground caverns. They followed the trail and followed it all the way. In the end, they lost track of it in an underground river. When they found the trail again, they were led to a demon nest. It took them quite a lot of effort to escape, and they ended up in a sorry state. Although they governed different regions, there were quite a few criminals who had escaped underground on the blacklist. They were unable to capture them. Wu Zhen just happened to have nowhere to vent his anger. He roared at Fang and Shang, "Haven't you learned tracking techniques from the 100 schools of thought? Have you?" Fang and Shang lowered his head. "I have. Why can't we find him if we do?" "Huh. Fang and Shang whispered. Didn't you learn it too, senior brother? The commanders all pursed their lips, but no one dared to laugh out loud. Wu Zhen's expression immediately seemed like he was about to explode. Qian Rongji pulled Fang and Shang aside in a hurry and advised, Don't be angry, sir. We've finally destroyed the Truth-Seeking Society, a branch of the evil White Lotus cult. After Chiu Ruelio suffered, he definitely won't show himself for a very long time. Even Commander Gu couldn't find the White Lotus mother. Wu Zhen's anger subsided slightly after being advised by a beautiful woman who even compared him to Gu Yenying. He glared at Fang in Shang viciously. Just when he was about to say something, a lazy voice came from upstairs. Hey, it's not good to talk about your superior in private. Wu Zhen suddenly turned around. Who is it? How dare you eavesdrop on us? How dare you? Commander Hua. Sungzan leaned against the railing on the second floor and smiled. Sir Wu, your temper has grown. Who's the brave one? Wu Zhen's face became bitter. I'm the brave one, all right? Why are you here? Hua Sungzan said. I just lost a criminal. There's no need for you to be like this. The net of justice is broad and thorough. So why would you worry about not having an opportunity in the future? It's just like what Rongji said. Boss Gu didn't kill the White Lotus mother either. He shifted his gaze and looked at Qian Rongji. I was just speaking carelessly. Please forgive me, Commander. I never thought you'd still remember my name. Qian Rongji bowed politely. She did not try to play up to him at all. Although they had only met once, this Commander Hua had left a very deep impression on her. She concluded that he was difficult to use. She personally believed her beauty and arts of charm were nowhere close to the sect master's opponent, and even the sect master did not seem to be able to control her completely. Moreover, at this point, taking the initiative to throw herself into his arms would only make him look down on her. Hua Sungzan smiled. As long as it's a beauty's name, I'll remember it. Oh, right. Have you found the one called Li Qingshan, who joined the Hawkwolf Guard with you? Qian Rongji said, Commander, although Li Qingshan and I joined the Hawkwolf Guard at the same time, we're not familiar with each other. I haven't heard from him in so long, so he's probably dead underground already. Really? I feel like we might be able to see him again. Hua Sungzan waved his hand and casually tossed down a painting scroll. It unfurled in the air, depicting a man in green clothes. The artist's technique was excellent. The man looked very young, no more than 20 years of age, but he was full of melancholy. His emaciated body supported his loose green robe, and there was even a hint of emaciation in his bones. This is your new mission. Identify this person. Once he appears in the vicinity of the Green Vine Mountain, contact me immediately. Remember, you can't touch him no matter what. With Wu Zhen in the lead, the Hawkwolf Guards answered loudly, Yes, sir. Clang. Yu Zijian paced around the courtyard alone. Suddenly, the sword on her waist thrummed gently. She stopped in surprise and drew the sword. The blade that was as clear as autumn reflected her confused face. She looked at the sword again and again, but she was confused. In the end, she could only sheath it. Clang! She leapt in fright and took a step back. She drew the sword again and looked at it again and again. Chapter 2:41. Before the ceremony, too, the long sword was placed horizontally on the marble table in the small courtyard. The sun was leaning towards the west, burning the sea of clouds into a sea of red clouds, reflecting on the long and narrow blade. That ordinary long sword suddenly had a glorious luster. Yu Zijian squinted her eyes and crouched beside the stone table, staring straight at the sword. The sword was silent. It did not move at all. Clang! Yu Zijian suddenly stood up. The sound was so clear that it seemed to be right by her ears, yet it also seemed to originate from the bottom of her heart. She stood up and pushed open the door, making her way onto the verdant path. She was in a daze, as if she had fallen into a dream. She could not control her own body, as if something in her heart was calling out to her. The path twisted and turned a few times before suddenly opening up. What appeared before her were ruined walls, like the ruins of an ancient city. The stone pillars that supported the hall rested in the grass. The hall had already collapsed a long time ago, and the statues had been corroded beyond recognition by time and wind. However, their past glory was still vaguely visible. Was there a place like that on the Greenvine Mountain? A question crossed Yu Zijian's mind, but she forgot about it in the blink of an eye. The setting sun dyed the ruins red. Even the most numb and vulgar person could not help but sigh when they arrived here. As she strolled through the ruins that were about to be swallowed by grass, she felt like she had returned home. She was like an exiled princess, and this was her homeland. She suddenly stopped after turning around the white stone passageway tangled in vines. A small pond sat in the embrace of verdant trees. The sunset glow from the west reflected on the surface of the water, dyeing it a gorgeous color. A man in black sat on a round rock beside the pond. His young, thin face was covered in stubble. He gave off a sense of melancholy that only an old man who had seen everything in the world possessed. He was like a lonely king sitting on his collapsed throne, constantly reminiscing about the glory of the past and lamenting the current melancholy. He was currently fishing, but he did not use a fishing rod, but a sword. He gripped the hilt with both hands, and a strand of black hair hung down from the tip of the sheath, sinking into the still, mirror-like water. Yu Zijian did not look at the scenery. She did not look at the person. She only stared at the sword as if she had become infatuated. For some reason, she became certain that the graceful thrum she heard just now came from the sword. "Have you seen this sword before?" The green-clothed man turned around and looked at her with some surprise. As if Yu Zijian had suddenly jerked awake from a dream, she looked around. She almost wanted to ask why she was here. She became dazed. "I've never seen you before. You're not a disciple of the Greenvine Mountain, right?" At a closer glance, he was also dressed in green, but it was very different from the uniform of the Greenvine Mountain. It seemed extremely old, just like the sword in his hand. The man in blue said, "No, are you?" Yu Zijian said, "I'm not either. You must be a guest that's been invited up the mountain. Fishing is forbidden on the mountain. Since you're not a disciple of the Greenvine Mountain, why do you care about me?" "I forget it. You continue fishing. I'm going back. I won't disturb your fishing." It was rather inappropriate for a man and woman to be together here alone, but her gaze never left the sword. The familiar feeling was basically like when she met Niu Juxiao in the past. The man in blue said, "Do you want to take a look?" "Can I?" Before Yu Zijian had even finished talking, the sword landed in her hand. It was heavy, while the strand of hair automatically returned to the sheath. The sheath was an inky green. Normally, that was because of its original color, while the other half was due to the passage of time. It seemed like it was made of both jade and wood. There was an exquisite pattern carved into it, like the silhouette of a city, but it was damaged and damaged. "What's the name of the sword?" "Qing Su." Clang! Yu Zijian gripped the hilt and drew the sword with a reverse grip. Sure enough, the familiar hum rang out by her ears, lingering for a very long time. It did not emit any light at all, but the light from the sword seemed to absorb the rainbow and autumn waters. What a sword! The man in blue's expression was even more surprised or even shocked than when he saw Yu Zijian just now. "I'm done. It's time for me to go." Yu Zijian sheathed the sword and tossed it back to the man in blue, reluctantly. The man in blue stood up. "Can you wait for me here?" At this moment, the afterglow on the horizon had already begun to recede. "I can't. I still have matters to attend to." Zijian skipped off into the distance. She thought, "Who are you? Why do you want me to wait for you? What a strange person. What's your name?" "I'm Yu Zijian said without even looking back. I'm Fu Qingjin." Zijian had already left the ruins and entered the jungle, vanishing. Fu Qingjin's voice sank as if he was murmuring to himself. He could step in and out of the green ruins illusion at will, and he could draw the green ruins sword. The divining elder was right. The first star lit up on the horizon. His eyes shone like the stars too. The scenery around him suddenly twisted like a mirage, vanishing and dispersing. Only the pond remained, reflecting the black shade of the surrounding trees. Fu Qingjin's gaze passed through the trees and landed on the hall at the top of the mountain. There was only a single lantern in the gloomy hall, illuminating the entire space. The three elders sat around the lantern. They remembered Hua Sengzan's warning. They did not dare to split up, just in case they were picked off one by one. The disciples of the various sects waited outside the hall. They were not here to lend a hand, but to immediately report to Hua Sengzan as soon as they heard any disturbances. There was a flash of green light, and the three elders suddenly discovered that their surroundings had changed. They were currently in ruins. Above them was the endless night sky, filled with stars. "Since when?" The golden pheasant elder paled in fright. "Thank you for waiting here. You've saved me quite a lot of trouble." A voice rang out from behind. The three of them turned around at the same time, only to see a man in blue descend from the tall steps. He was young and old, lonely and noble. The green vine elder said, "Why, you're the one." "That commander, Hua has told you everything that needs to be said, right?" Fu Qingjin said calmly, as if even explaining the reason was exhausting. The three of them stood in a triangular formation. Although they were old enemies, their teamwork was flawless. "I haven't come for the three mountains. My mission isn't to defeat you either." The three elders basically let out a sigh of relief at the same time. "Though, it's best if I defeat you first." "Don't worry, I won't harm you." Before the three elders could even become furious, the glow from the green glowing sword turned into thousands of strands and flew over. A while later, the three elders emerged from the hall, and the door closed firmly behind them. "Master, do we keep watching?" "There's no need. We're going down," the green vine elder said, rather tiredly. The three of them looked at one another. There seemed to still be lingering fear in their eyes, as well as some realization. No wonder Hua Sengzan had personally come to inform them. That person's mission was actually the Sword Collection Palace really was as resolute as the legends said. However, if this really happened, the world would be in danger. It was not just an exaggeration. The green vine elder said, "Please return and rest up. Make your preparations. The herb gathering ceremony is about to begin." The deep pit was like a huge, hollow eye gazing at the sky. Almost 1,000 pairs of eyes stared back at the huge eye. They were filled with excitement, desire, and fear. The cold wind whistled, unable to drown out the hubbub of voices. Everyone discussed. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. The three elders arrived beside the pit under the escort of everyone. The green vine elder struck first, activating the formation. Everyone could vaguely see a barrier of light disperse. The golden pheasant elder's hand shone with resplendent light, and the snow in the pit rapidly melted away. It revealed over a dozen pitch-black holes below. These holes were the entrances to the herb gathering ceremony. They led to various places underground, Everyone could not help but gasp, which immediately drowned out the sound of the wind. The green vine elder cleared his throat. Fellow cultivators, you've all gathered here for the herb gathering ceremony of the Three Mountains. It is an honor for me and the Golden Pheasant and Lone Grave, with Wu Zhen in the lead. Over a dozen hawkwolf guards moved through the independent cultivators. They constantly studied the people around them, as if they were trying to prevent anyone from sneaking into the ceremony. As for the disciples of the Three Mountains, they split into 3 groups, standing behind their respective sect masters. Afterwards, they formed smaller groups as they pleased. Due to the success of the herb gathering ceremony earlier, basically all the disciples of the Three Mountains had been mobilized. It was impossible for over 100 Qi practitioners to advance together. Once they encountered a fork underground, they would obviously split up. Yu Zijian stuck her head out and looked around. Suddenly, someone patted her shoulder gently. She turned around in a hurry and said in surprise and joy, "Chenglu, why have you come?" "Hua?" Chenglu lowered her body. "Sure, don't be so loud. Just in case my brother hears you. I'm worried about you, so I'll go down with you and take a look." Mu Zhitsong suddenly called out, "Miss Hua, you're not a disciple of our Green Vine Mountain, so please don't stand with us. If you want to participate in the ceremony, you can join the group of independent cultivators over there." Everyone looked over. Hua Chenglu pointed at Mu Zhitsong furiously. "You dash." Suddenly, she felt her collar tighten. Looking back, she saw that it was Hua Sungzan. He scolded, "Don't mess around." He pulled Hua Chenglu away before nodding at Yu Zijian. "Good luck." Hua Chenglu called out, "Zijian, be careful." Mu Zhitsong said gently, "Don't worry, Zijian. I will definitely protect you." Just when Yu Zijian was about to say something, she suddenly saw a familiar figure standing in the crowd. It was the man in green who had fished by the pond. He had changed into the uniform of the Green Vine Mountain, and he gave off the aura of a 4th-layer Qi practitioner. He just stood there by himself, not talking to anyone around him. For some reason, no one else seemed to notice him. He sensed Yu Zijian's gaze and turned around with a smile. Yu Zijian asked in confusion, "Senior Brother Mu, since when did the Green Vine Mountain gain a new disciple?" "What new disciple?" Mu Zhitsong followed Yu Zijian's gaze and looked over. There was a flash of green clothes, and Fu Qingjin's figure had already vanished. Yu Zijian rubbed her head. How strange. At this moment, the Green Vine Elder's speech ended. The 3 elders looked at one another and nodded at the same time. They did not glance at Fu Qingjin the entire time, nor did they show any strange expressions. Hua Sungzan, who had been observing their expressions from afar the entire time, eased up slightly. The 3 elders said at the same time, "The herb gathering ceremony of the Three Mountains officially begins." Chapter 242. The enemy of humanity. In the depths of the endless underground, numerous ferocious demons were gathering from all directions. The faint light from the moss illuminated the wide cavern, but even brighter were dozens of pairs of eyes. Most of their pupils were squinted into slits, as if they were not used to such a bright environment. Fierce, cold, or arrogant gazes clashed in the air, creating sparks. Their breaths, filled with the stench of blood, rose and fell like the restlessness of a volcano before an eruption. Occasionally, a low roar could be heard, like thunder rolling across the sky, echoing endlessly in the cavern. Their demonic auras gathered in the darkness, entangling with one another and exchanging information. However, they maintained a cautious distance between each other. Their enormous bodies formed black shadows in the dim light, wriggling, swaying, and twisting. In the past, they had never interacted with each other, but today they had been summoned by a single person. Suddenly, their gazes converged in the same direction. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps shook the ground. They were still very far away, but a violent wave of demonic aura rushed into the cavern first. This was how the demons greeted each other, but it was filled with arrogance and provocation. Normally, it would cause a fight. All the demons retracted their demonic auras and lowered their heads, as if they were subjects waiting for the arrival of their king. They could all sense that he had become even stronger. Like a sharpened demonic blade, it shone with a bloodthirsty light. A huge black shadow appeared at the dark entrance of the cavern. The entrance was diagonally above the cavern and was several meters wide, but it was still not big enough to accommodate his body. However, he only raised his head high. His two sharp horns swept across the ceiling of the cavern, creating a string of sparks. The black shadow leapt into the air. His enormous body was not clumsy at all. He was like a ferocious tiger coming down the mountain. He landed loudly, his scarlet hair flying like fire. His scarlet eyes swept across the crowd of demons like a blade, causing them to lower their heads even more. Little N and Millipede sat on his shoulders, one on the left and the other on the right. Little N had turned into a skeleton, and two skull prayer beads floated above his head. Millipede, on the other hand, was dozing off against Li Qingshan's head. However, the powerful demonic aura emanating from his body continued to spread in all directions, scattering the demonic auras of the other demons. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and blood and flesh rained down, forming a small mountain in the center of the cave. These were dishes cooked by humans, and the three fresh animals mixed together, giving off an alluring fragrance. Almost all the demons were drooling. They had never seen so much food in their lives. "This is what I promised. Now eat." Li Qingshan's deep voice was like a metallic hum, penetrating rapidly. His words were like a spark falling into the fire. The demons swarmed forward, each more ferocious and vigorous than the last. Pouncing on food was their innate instinct. After a few roars to test the waters, they were naturally divided into ranks. The strongest few monsters were the first to eat. The blackwater salamander gulped down a pile of fresh fish. It was glad that it had come. Otherwise, it would have missed out on such a feast. The boulder viper coiled its body and swallowed an entire cow. With a wave of its tail, it swallowed a sheep. The ice frog's eating method was the strangest. It opened its mouth to a terrifying extent and breathed out cold air, freezing the food into ice shards. Then it sucked hard, and its body immediately swelled up. All the ice shards were sucked into its body, like a bottomless pit that could not be filled no matter what. The other monsters were patrolling restlessly in the surroundings. This scene was like an ancient and primitive ceremony. They were like the ancestors of mankind, dancing around a bonfire to start their civilization. Millipede smelled the fragrance of food and opened his eyes slightly. Li Qingshan passed him the food and wine that he had prepared. He ate heartily, then lay down on Li Qingshan's shoulder and fell asleep. Li Qingshan shook his head. He had wanted Millipede to say a few words to raise the morale of the demons, but it seemed that there was no need. He did not take out all the food at once. Hunger was the driving force behind the food. When the three demon soldiers under him had eaten half of the food, he ordered them to stop and let the other demons eat. However, the feasting demons were at their most ferocious. Why would they listen to Li Qingshan's orders? They only cared about eating and drinking. Li Qingshan began to move. He grabbed the boulder viper's head with his huge claws and pressed it against the ground. The boulder viper's body wrapped around Li Qingshan instinctively, like a thick belt. It coiled around Li Qingshan's waist a few times, but it discovered that its body was even tougher than metal. The piercing pain from its head made it return to its senses. The claws could actually pierce its armor. He grabbed the Blackwater salamander's neck with his other hand. Although the Blackwater salamander could slide away, it did not move obediently. The ice frog wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to eat a few more mouthfuls, but a bone sword was aimed at it. Little Anne's eye sockets burned with flames. The bone sword had been forged from the bones of the first senior brother of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain. Although the artifact forging section of the Path of White Bone and Great Beauty had a sword called the Buddha Slaying Sword, it was not something that little Anne could forge right now. As a result, apart from being tough, the sword did not have any other uses. However, to a supreme swordsman, a tough sword was enough. The ice frog was immediately stunned by the sword intent. It dared not move. It felt like as long as it moved slightly, it would attract a tsunami of attacks. The 3 strongest demon soldiers were subdued immediately, and the other demons dared not move either. Millipede opened his sleepy eyes and asked, "Are they disobedient?" Li Qingshan smiled. "You'll have to ask them that." The 3 demons expressed their submission in a hurry. Li Qingshan released the 3 demon soldiers and said nothing more. He only declared his right to distribute the food once more. The leader would always declare this right to the group and strike down anyone who tried to provoke him. The other demon soldiers immediately ate in a much more orderly manner. After all of the food had been distributed, all the demons felt like they had not had enough. Their stomachs that had not eaten for a very long time seemed to become even hungrier. The human cultivators have already begun to enter the underground. Li Qingshan finally spoke. At the same time, he used demon chi and his voice to send a message. All of the demons raised their heads cautiously. They also understood the danger that humans posed. For the sake of killing us, for the demon cores in our bodies, for the spiritual herbs in our caves, from today onwards, you must listen to my orders. You cannot fight on your own anymore. We must work together and face the enemy together. After this, I will redistribute the food according to your contributions. Now, set off and kill everyone. Li Qingshan raised his right hand before swinging it down viciously. Various howls and howls shook up the cavern, causing rocks to fall down. The demon army set off. Li Qingshan stood at the very back. When all of the demons had entered the cavern, he muttered to himself in an extremely low voice. The code name for this operation is Enemy of Humanity. A strange smile appeared on his face. It seemed to be a cruel smile, a bitter smile of sorrow, or a cold smile of self-mockery. Then it all disappeared, replaced by silent determination. This was the path he had chosen. He would not hesitate or regret it. All right, go to sleep. Li Qingshan put Millipede down from his shoulder. There would not be any Foundation establishment cultivators entering the underground. With his current strength, he could kill any chi practitioner. Be careful, Millipede muttered. He crawled towards his cave abode, his buttocks rising and falling. He moved extremely quickly. Li Qingshan smiled easily. He put his hands in front of his chest and bowed slightly. I will fight for you. Then he nodded at Little and for you. Finally, he stood up and said proudly, fight for me. With large strides, he disappeared into the depths of the cavern. His footsteps landed on the ground silently, advancing steadily and quickly. The disciples of the 3 sects had already split up underground, advancing towards their respective targets and paths. Normally, it would be a chi practitioner at the 6th layer or above leading a few weaker chi practitioners. This group was led by the person who called himself caretaker, Lu Fengrui. However, his face was sunken. He completely ignored the flattery of his junior brothers beside him. Recently, he had been very unhappy on the Greenvine Mountain. He had never thought that bringing back a little girl would actually cause so much trouble. Not only did he earn the cold glances of his senior brothers, but even the Greenvine elder did not treat him kindly. He was not afraid of the cold glances of his senior brothers, but once he lost the favor of his master in a small sect like this, it would be extremely terrifying. He could not help but grind his teeth in hatred towards Yu Zijian. He was eager for her to die in the ceremony this time. If there was a good opportunity, he did not mind contributing to this matter. Senior brother, there's a demonic beast's nest up ahead. There should be quartz grass growing in the surroundings. That's an essential spiritual herb for refining stone grain pills. A disciple of the Greenvine Mountain said in surprise and joy as he held a small mental map in his hand. He interrupted Lu Fengrui's thoughts and said in displeasure, "What kind of high-grade spiritual herb is quartz grass? We're still very close to the surface. If you want to find the good stuff, you'll have to go even deeper. It's just a demonic beast, and it hasn't even condensed a demon core yet." The disciples of the Greenvine Mountain all nodded obediently. Venturing deeper underground increased the danger. How could demons with demon cores be so easy to deal with? Although demonic beasts did not have demon cores, their skin and bones were all great materials for forging spiritual artifacts. Their flesh and blood were of great use too. "Let's go take a look," Lu Fengrui ordered. All he could do was gather some more spiritual herbs from the herb-gathering ceremony, this time to redeem his master's impression of him. The dark cave was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. The group moved forward quickly. The clear sight talisman didn't affect their eyesight too much. With their skills, the winding cave with rocks couldn't stop their footsteps. Suddenly, a third-layer Qi practitioner disciple said, "Senior brother, it's so cold." He shivered as well. Lu Fengrui also sensed the coldness in the surroundings. Looking back at his junior brothers, they were all pale-faced, and their lips had turned blue. Qi practitioners with innate true Qi should have been impervious to heat and cold, but right now they were afraid of the cold like regular people. This is unusual. The records didn't say it would be so cold in here. It wasn't so cold last time I came. The underground caverns change frequently. Has something happened? Do you want to go somewhere else, senior brother? An old Qi practitioner asked carefully. He was only a third-layer Qi practitioner, so he had to refer to Lu Fengrui as senior brother. Lu Fengrui's eyes swiveled. "Master is watching us from above. If we retreat before we've even encountered any danger, what kind of disciple of the Greenvine Mountain are we? Let's go. It won't be cold if we walk." The quartz grass is right up ahead. They began to run through the cavern, but the coldness did not lessen. Instead, it grew colder and colder. Even Lu Fengrui felt the bone-chilling coldness, let alone the junior brothers behind him. They all slowed down. "We can't. Senior brother, let's retreat. Croak, croak." Just when Lu Fengrui was about to order them to retreat, a loud croak rang through the cavern. "It's a demonic beast." Everyone responded. Apart from demonic beasts, what other animals could survive here? "We'll leave after we kill this demonic beast." Lu Fengrui beamed with joy and hurried off with the others. Cold mist permeated the darkness, and a layer of frost formed on the gray quartz grass. An icy blue frog hopped around on a rock. "Croak, croak." Lu Fengrui could not help but feel disappointed. The strength of a demonic beast was often related to its size. The larger it was, the more powerful it was, and the more valuable it was. The frog was so small, so it had clearly only recently evolved from a beast to a demon. Suddenly, he thought of something. How could a low-level demonic beast give off such a heavy coldness? "Who's there?" A few blurry figures appeared in the cold mist. Lu Fengrui's eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand and struck out. It had already been a secret for Qi practitioners to kill one another for the sake of spiritual herbs and demonic beasts. Underground, humans were even more dangerous than demons. Even more terrifyingly, he actually failed to sense their presences. Clearly, they were hiding on purpose and wanted to launch a sneak attack, which was why he showed no mercy right from the start. However, the figures did not move at all, allowing the true Qi to land on them. There was a crisp sound, and the wind from the palm dispersed the cold mist, revealing the figures. Lu Fengrui immediately felt like all the blood in his body had frozen. He finally understood why he could not sense their presences. It was because they had all been reduced to ice sculptures. Dead people obviously did not have any presences. They all wore the uniform of the pheasant's Grace Mountain. One of them had 2 chicken feathers embroidered on his chest. He was an inner disciple before the 6th layer, but now they were all dead. They were all dead, but their bodies were still in the same position as before they died. They were still trying to wield their spirit tools and conjure their spells. Their expressions were frozen with fear, and they were all looking in the same direction, the ice-blue frog. What demon is this? In his fright, a disciple of the Green Vine Mountain swung a green staff that flickered with light at the ice frog. The ice frog opened its mouth and sprayed out a ball of white, cold air. The disciple was immediately frozen into an ice sculpture. The cold air gushed out, and his seniors and juniors behind him immediately followed in his footsteps. The cold air was like thousands of tiny invisible blades piercing their protective true Qi. Crack, crack. The air was filled with the sounds of freezing, like the notes of death. Lu Fengrui summoned his flying sword as he roared out before maintaining the same posture forever. One final thought flashed through his mind. They were not facing some demonic beast, but a true demon, and a powerful one among demons at that. However, why would a demon appear at such a shallow level? It was just like how a 10th layer Qi practitioner killing a group of weaker Qi practitioners was a piece of cake. Croak, croak. 11, croak, croak. That's enough for 10. The ice frog opened its mouth and sucked. The ice sculptures shattered into ice shards and were sucked into its mouth. Only the spirit artifacts in their hands and the 100 treasures pouches on their bodies remained intact. Croak, croak, the leader wants this. The ice frog collected all of them and placed them in a cave not far away. This was the token used to calculate contribution points. Inside the cave was a huge rabbit-like demonic beast. Its body was shriveled up, and it was trembling nonstop. It was unknown whether it was because of fear or the cold. It was originally the target that the Qi practitioners were looking for. Fellow Greenvine, looks like even your disciple failed to defeat the demon there, the golden pheasant elder said coldly. In the location of the herb gathering ceremony, the 3 elders stayed in a bamboo pavilion together. They admired the snow and drank tea as they waited for the outcome of the ceremony. Before them was a projection from the underground mental map. Many specks of light flickered on it, split into 3 colors, gold, azure, and gray, indicating the location of the disciples of the 3 mountains. It was just like the pathfinding puppet insects the disciples of Moism had used in the past. With the deaths of Lu Fengrui and the others, the specks of light on them faded away too. Before that, the golden specks of light that represented the disciples of the pheasant's Grace Mountain had vanished there too. The Green Vine elder said, "There must be a powerful demon there, but that shouldn't be. It's only a shallow layer." The lone grave elder said, "You'll know if you keep watching." The boulder viper moved through the earth as it flicked its forked tongue, constantly sensing the presence of the humans in the cave. Suddenly, it emerged from the wall and saw the frightened faces of a few humans. They were all extremely weak. The Qi practitioners only saw a gray shadow pass over their heads. They did not even manage to make out the demon's appearance before they were frightened out of their wits by the terrifying demon Chi. The leading seventh layer Chi practitioner bellowed out, "Summon the zombies!" They were disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain. The disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain immediately waved the bronze talismans in their hands. Several dozen zombies scattered around them, surrounding them tightly. The seventh layer Chi practitioner even summoned two indestructible iron plate corpses. Corpse Chi coiled around them. Every single one of them was even more powerful than the iron plate corpses the zombie Taoist had refined in the past. The boulder viper turned around. Its long body coiled up and suddenly tightened. Dozens of zombies and a few disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain were in the low cavern. The disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain had nowhere to run. They felt a tremendous force pressing down on them from all directions, and they were immediately ground into a pile of meat paste, no longer distinguishable from the zombies they had refined. The deathly aura on the lone grave elder's face seemed to grow heavier too. The green vine elder and the golden pheasant elder's expressions were ugly as well. On the underground mental map, large swathes of specks of light were extinguished. Groups of herb gatherers died underground. The number of Chi practitioners they had lost in a short period of time had already exceeded the total number lost during the herb gathering ceremony last time. And right now, the herb gathering ceremony had only just begun. The Chi practitioners had only ventured into the shallow layer. They should not have run into any powerful demons. Sect masters, what's going on? Hua Sungzan, who had been paying attention to this the entire time, walked into the bamboo pavilion with a stern expression. He understood what these specks of light represented. Chapter 243. The Golden Pheasant Elder said, "The Pheasant's Grace Mountain has 11 as well. The Great Wall." The Lone Grave Elder said, 7. However, they all knew that this was not because the Burial Mound Mountain's disciples were strong enough, but because they could manipulate corpses as shields. Close to 30 disciples had all died in less than 4 hours. Although the number of inner sect disciples lost was not that many, it was enough to shake the foundations of the 3 mountains. Hua Sungzan furrowed his brows. No one would have thought that the herb gathering ceremony would have such a turn of events. Could it be that the monsters underground had already made their preparations and were waiting to ambush the Chi practitioners? Perhaps the demon general in this area could no longer tolerate the humans running amok underground and began to react. If that was really the case, then death was just the beginning. It was very likely that all the cultivators participating in the herb gathering ceremony would be wiped out. He was already unable to imagine what sort of waves the death of nearly 1,000 human cultivators would cause. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh as he gazed at the surging dark clouds in the sky. The general situation of the world is really about to change. The 3 elders felt their hearts bleed. Their faces were all sunken as killing intent surged through their eyes. That person was right. All demons deserve to die. Brother, you mean? Zijian? Hua Qinglu rushed over from afar and grabbed Hua Sungzan's sleeve anxiously. As he said that, a few more specks of light vanished. Although Yu Zijian was not a disciple of the Green Vine Mountain, she was still equipped with a sensing spiritual artifact. She was one of the many specks of light, so who knew when they would be extinguished? I can only wish her good luck. Hua Sungzan pressed down on Hua Qinglu's shoulder. Even now, he was powerless to help. If a demon general really was moving, then the underground would become a forbidden zone for Chi practitioners. He was known as the greatest below Foundation establishment, but he was still a Chi practitioner. If it were Hua Qinglu underground right now, he would obviously enter without any hesitation. However, it was impossible for him to take such a risk for an unfamiliar girl. Hua Chenglu bit her lip. She understood Hua Sengzan's considerations. She could not be stubborn and demand anything. The black demon sat alone in the huge cave. It raised its right arm and stretched out its index finger. The fingertip was a giant claw that was as sharp as a knife. It lightly touched the forehead of a young man. The young man was also alone. He seemed to be around 15 or 16 years old. A soft beard had just begun to grow on his lips, but he was already a third-layer Qi practitioner. He could be considered a minor genius. Judging from his clothes, he was not from the Three Mountains. He was probably an independent cultivator from some clan who had come to try his luck. There was only darkness reflected in his frightened eyes. The fierce, murderous aura and demonic aura had completely crushed his will to resist. However, the monster did not attack immediately. It seemed to give him a glimmer of hope and begged, "No, I beg you, However, the thick smell of blood came from behind the black demon. The young man saw clearly that it was a pile of Qi practitioners' corpses. His lips trembled in fear, and turbid tears flowed down his cheeks. A moment ago, a group of disciples from the Pheasant's Grace Mountain hurried over. With the experience of their seniors, it was often easier for them to find spiritual herbs and spiritual lands inhabited by demonic beasts than independent cultivators. But this time, it was a true demon that resided there, and it was the leader of the demons at that. The familiar clothes made up some of Li Qingshan's hateful memories, and the seventh-layer Qi practitioner who led this group seemed to have met him once in the quiet Spring Valley. Arg! The first person who saw Li Qingshan, the disciple of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, cried out before coming to a halt. Li Qingshan's index finger had already stabbed into his chest like a huge spear. Only then did the other disciples return to their senses. They roared out and struck out together, taking out talismans, drawing out spiritual artifacts, and condensing techniques. The person who reacted the fastest was the inner disciple of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, a seventh-layer Qi practitioner. However, before his golden pheasant plume could even take flight, a huge hand appeared before him. The index finger and thumb tapped out gently before flicking out carelessly. His head was smashed to pieces. His brains and shattered bones scattered across the ground. At this moment, those who took out talismans had only just extended their hands into their talisman pouches. Those who drew out spiritual artifacts had only just lit up, and those who condensed techniques had only just mobilized their true Qi. The sacred hall did not even have the time to react to everything that had happened before him. Li Qingshan waved his hand casually, and thick blood spurted out. Not a single one of them survived. The battle began in the blink of an eye and ended in the blink of an eye. It was so simple that even Li Qingshan himself was slightly surprised. Back then, who knew how much effort he had expended to deal with a sixth-layer Qi practitioner like Zhuo Zhibua? Although he hadn't been able to overcome the heavenly tribulation and take that legendary first step after cultivating the second layer of the tiger demon, his powerful strength had transformed into a terrifying battle prowess that could suppress the strongest of demons. How could any Qi practitioner be a match for him? Li Qingshan did not enjoy torturing and killing his opponents, so they all died extremely quickly and painlessly. The more direct reason was that he did not know these disciples of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain at all. Even the leader had only barked a few times meaninglessly at him. However, since they were disciples of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, they were sworn enemies. There was nothing much to say. If he killed them, then he killed them. But right now, the young man standing before him was a complete stranger. Clang! Like the hum of a blade, there was a cold flash, and the headless corpse of the young man collapsed on the ground. Just now, he had paused, not because he was still hesitating. He was just reminiscing about what he was about to cut off and throw away. Just like how mountain climbers needed to empty their overly heavy backpacks in order to climb to the very top, they had to take out the items inside and toss them into the abyss one by one. However, these items could have originally been very important, so he could not help but sigh inside. Everyone wanted to reach the very top without losing anything, just like how everyone wanted to succeed without paying any price. However, this was impossible. The price was not just hard work. If Li Qingshan was willing to live a peaceful life and not think about leaving Qingyang or even beyond the 9 heavens, he would be able to live a much more relaxed life. However, he could not do that because the mountain was there. Li Qingshan stabbed the corpse with his finger and tossed it behind him. It landed on a small pile of corpses, and he said, "Don't eat it. These were all for little," and there was also a cowering demonic beast in the cavern. Even though it was attracted by the flesh and blood, it did not dare to move at all. Li Qingshan had never studied the art of war or anything like that, but he was not unfamiliar with military knowledge in the age of information explosion in his past life. He knew what it meant to gather forces to destroy the enemy's effective forces. He would place the 2 strongest demon soldiers under him in a few locations that were most likely to attract Qi practitioners before lying in wait. As for Little and the Boulder Viper, who were more mobile, they constantly patrolled the main paths underground, killing the weaker Qi practitioners. The remaining demons would gather together in groups of 3 to 5 at the very least. They would be led by their strongest leader, just in case they ran into stronger Qi practitioners. With just a simple adjustment, the demons were basically undefeatable. It was not even any more complicated than playing a game. As the leader of the demon soldiers, Li Qingshan did not remain uninvolved. Instead, he chose a place where spiritual veins gathered and spiritual herbs flourished, beginning his wait and slaughter. Li Qingshan exhaled deeply and stowed the 100 treasures pouch away. He leaned on his hand and continued to wait. Killing strangers was not exactly fun, but obtaining the 100 treasures pouch made him quite happy. After this battle, the pills he obtained would be enough for him to break through to the 2nd layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. Suddenly, he raised his head and sniffed the air gently. Through the heavy smell of blood and the familiar scent, he recalled some of his past memories. He could not help but frown. Why was she here? Although it had only been over a month since they parted, waiting in the gloomy underground for a while felt like an eternity. "Let's go out and take a walk." Li Qingshan stood up and made his way out of the cavern. After taking a few steps, he turned around and said to the demonic beast, "You're not allowed to eat it." If the demonic beast could cry, it was already close to tears from fright. Their jade-green and blood-red pupils danced about in the darkness. A few colossal demons surrounded a few Qi practitioners. Their mouths were filled with sharp teeth as they spat out a heavy stench. "Senior brother, what do we do?" Cheng Jelly paled. Mu Jitsong's forehead was covered in sweat. He controlled a flying sword and wandered around in the surroundings. However, with his strength, a single demon was already very difficult for him, let alone several demons at the same time. Even his chances of survival were pitifully minuscule. How did this happen? How did this happen? This was clearly just a nest of demonic beasts, so why were there so many demons gathered together? And they were all different species. Mu Jitsong was filled with fury and doubt. The spiritual ground had only been cleaned out once during the herb gathering ceremony, and it was a disciple of the Green Vine Mountain who had killed them. Even if new demonic beasts took over this place, they should not be much stronger than wild beasts. He had only come here to try his luck. If he came across demonic beasts, he would use them to test his strength and show Yu Zijian his might. Chapter 244. Blood splattered on Yu Zijian. Her eyes widened as she stared blankly at everything before her, as if she had fallen into an unreal nightmare. The disciples of the Green Vine, Mountain cried out in panic. They swung the weapons in their hands wildly, and the defensive formation that they had managed to put up immediately shattered. Chung Jelly suddenly felt her waist tighten. A tongue from the darkness had wrapped around her. On the other end of the tongue was a gaping mouth filled with sharp teeth. She stabbed her sword into the ground, but she was still pulled towards the gaping mouth bit by bit. Her waist ached like it was being ripped apart. She extended her hand in despair and called out, "Save me, senior brother!" Sure enough, Mu Jitsong approached her. She smiled happily. Her senior brother really did care about her. With a bang, Mu Jitsong slammed his palm against Chung Jelly's chest as hard as he could. She crashed straight into the monster's bloody mouth. She was already dead in midair. Her towering chest had now collapsed into a mess of flesh and blood. An expression of disbelief still remained on her face. Mu Jitsong curled up, while Chung Jelly stuffed up the demon's mouth. He leapt up and actually leapt out of the demon's encirclement. A huge boar-like demon leapt up with a speed that did not match its colossal body, hurtling towards Mu Jitsong like a cannonball. Mu Jitsong pushed off with the tip of his foot and stood on his flying sword. He leapt over 30 meters away and heard a rumble behind him. The huge boar-like boar had collided with the ceiling of the cave, causing rocks to collapse and dust to rise into the air. He could vaguely hear a few cries of despair. "Senior brother, don't abandon us. Save us, senior brother." He did not hear Yu Zijian's voice. He had no idea whether it was hidden among the voices. He made up his mind. "Don't blame me. It's better for me to survive than to die with you. There's nothing I can do about it." For some reason, the monsters did not chase after him. Before the ecstasy of surviving a disaster could even surge out of his heart, he ran into a black iron wall in a panic. Li Qingshan sensed the tiny figure that had run over. He grabbed and squeezed almost instinctively. There was a crack, and his hand became drenched in blood. Looking at the dead man's face that was bleeding from all 7 orifices, he realized that he seemed to have seen this person somewhere before. After thinking carefully, he remembered Mu Jitsong's name. He didn't know about Mu Jitsong's plot against him. He scratched his head and felt very embarrassed. But since he was underground, he could only feel embarrassed. For him, remembering this kind of thing once was enough. Sensing the aura within the dust cloud, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that he had arrived in time. As long as she was fine, everything would be fine. When Mu Jitsong used Chung Jelly's corpse to leave, Yu Zijian closed her eyes and pursed her lips. If she encountered something she could not accept and was powerless to stop, wasn't this how humans behaved? She even wanted to cover her ears so that she could not hear the screams coming from beside her. However, her hand was holding the sword hilt so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was as if she was going to crush the hilt, but she did not pull it out. At this moment, what was the use of drawing the sword? The smell of blood and scorching heat flooded her face. Death was right before her eyes. Many scenes flashed through her mind. As it turned out, her father was right. When people faced death, they would really recall their entire lives. Even though her life was extremely short, it was filled with sunshine and joy. She had received her father's care and love from her fellow disciples. However, this only worsened the pain before death. Without Mu Jitsong, the demons basically finished off the remaining disciples in no time at all. Chapter 245. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped. He sensed the auras of many human cultivators up ahead. In human form, his senses had been drastically weakened, so he had only discovered them when he arrived here. Sacred Hall. They were already very close to the surface, but they still needed to pass through the long, winding caves. The path before them was basically a path they had to pass through. If they turned back now, they would have to take a long detour. Yu Zijian asked, "What's wrong?" Li Qingshan smiled. "Nothing. There are quite a few Qi practitioners up ahead. Let's go take a look." They rushed forward, and the intestines of the colossal beast began to wriggle again. A while later, they saw another stomach, a large cavern that was several dozen meters across. Several dozen Qi practitioners were either sitting or standing. They all wore different attires. Not only were there disciples of the three mountains, but there were also a few independent cultivators. Every single one of them was still shaken, and many of them were injured. Clearly, it had taken them a great deal of effort to escape from the demon soldiers under Li Qingshan's command and gather here. They were already frightened. When they heard the sound, they all stood up and gazed into the tunnel. When they saw the two of them, many of them immediately became dispirited. They could not be bothered with them. Li Qingshan did not stop. He leapt high into the air with Yu Zijian in his arms. He did not just want to send Yu Zijian out. He planned on sending Yu Zijian out of the cavern, then turning around and turning into a demon to unleash a massacre. He glanced past everyone and took in their current state. There was actually a 9th layer Qi practitioner here. From his attire, he seemed to be a disciple of the Burial Mound Mountain. His face was pale, and he radiated with a deathly aura. Although he seemed to be in his 30s, he seemed like someone who had been dead for 30 years. Perhaps he was some first senior brother. There were 3 or 4 8th layer Qi practitioners as well. Less than half of them were 6th layer Qi practitioners and below. Sure enough, it was impossible to escape from the encirclement of his demon army without some strength. As soon as Li Qingshan leapt into the air, he heard a cold bellow. "Get down here. Come down." His leaping action had angered the 9th layer Qi practitioner. Li Qingshan had guessed correctly. That person was the eldest senior brother of the Burial Mound Mountain, a person who had absolute authority in the sect. How could he tolerate a 4th layer Qi practitioner leaping over his head? Today he had suffered a great loss and was in the midst of his anger. Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian raised his hands and a dark green ball of ptomaine poison shot forth. Its target was none other than Li Qingshan. This corpse poison ball was one of the ultimate techniques of the Burial Mound Mountain. It looked inconspicuous, but it was condensed from the corpse Qi collected from 100-year-old corpses. Not only was it extremely poisonous, it could also invade one's protective true Qi. Regardless of whether it was a human or a beast, coming into contact with it would only result in death. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. He had already gotten used to these Qi warriors' habit of killing people at the slightest disagreement, so he didn't feel particularly angry. If this world was really a coliseum, he had already gotten used to playing the role of a gladiator or a beast. The corpse poison ball exploded into a ball of dark green corpse Qi in the air, enveloping Li Qingshan and Yu Zijian. "You're looking to die." The first senior brother swung his sleeve and snorted coldly. The knot in his heart eased up slightly. The disciples of the other sects and independent cultivators all distanced themselves slightly further away from him. They had heard long ago that the disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain were vicious and merciless, murdering countless people. Sure enough, the battle today was true. First senior brother, that person is tall and sturdy. He seems to be suitable for refining corpses, said a disciple of the Burial Mound Mountain. A disciple of the Burial Mound Mountain said. They were not like the disciples of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, who were full of flattery to satisfy the first senior brother's vanity. However, they all had expressionless, dead faces. Only when they mentioned corpses would their eyes shine. That was their desire for power. In the Burial Mound Mountain, the stronger the zombies they controlled, the more powerful they would be. They could even surpass the level of chi practitioners. Oh, really? Before the first senior brother had even finished talking, there was a series of swishes, and several hundred icicles shot out from the poisonous mist. They were both rapid and dense. The first senior brother did not move at all. He rubbed his wrist. He wore an ancient bronze bangle on his wrist. It was mottled with blood, but as soon as he touched it, it immediately lit up. He summoned a steel plate corpse before him. The steel plate corpse shone brightly, surrounded by corpse chi. Who knew how many times better it was than the zombie Taoist's iron plate corpse? Sacred Hall. The icicles struck the steel frame. The indestructible icicles landed on the steel plate corpse, but there was only a series of clangs and clangs. They left behind a few white marks, forming a layer of ice. Li Qingshan landed on the ground gently and placed Yu Zijin down. The thin layer of ice around them immediately shattered, sucking them back into the whale's ingestion of water. Ever since the battle last time, he had returned to the spring and replenished his ice condensate water, so he was able to use the whale's ingestion of water with greater ease now. His gaze was calm and cold. He said nothing. There was nothing much to say. They were going to fight to the death sooner or later anyway. What he had to consider right now was just a matter of when. However, Yu Zijin said furiously, "Why are you attacking us?" Underground, she had already witnessed the viciousness and terror of demons, but she found it even more difficult to understand why humans would still attack humans even at a time like this. The first senior brother said emotionlessly, "Because I'm willing." Yu Zijin was so furious that she was rendered speechless. "Let's go." Li Qingshan patted her shoulder and casually wrapped his arm around her waist, lifting her up and leaving. They were not very far from the surface anymore. He could deal with them after he transformed. He decided that when the time came, he would kill this first senior brother a little slower and show him what "I'm willing" meant. You want to leave? It won't be that easy. A few disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain summoned several dozen zombies surrounding Li Qingshan. Every single one of them moved as swiftly as the wind. Among them, there were 13 iron plate corpses. They possessed the arts of refining corpses that had been passed down through the sect. The zombie Taoist could not rival them at all. Li Qingshan said, "What are you trying to do?" The first senior brother said, "Everyone has to stay behind to fend off the demons." He had brought the strongest batch of disciples from Burial Mound Mountain underground. Right from the start, their target was not the weak demonic beasts in the shallow layer underground, nor the spirit herbs that had been harvested many times. Instead, they had chosen a shortcut and went straight underground. That shortcut was an underground river. However, in the river, they encountered the attack of an extremely terrifying monster. The monster's body was pitch black, and it moved like a shadow in the water. It directly caused a huge flood, and water arrows that were 10 times more terrifying than the icicles shot out continuously. However, their attacks were completely useless when they landed on the demon. They lost a few junior brothers and a large number of zombies. Just now, they had escaped, only to be attacked by various demons that only appeared deep underground. They fought as they fled, taking the long way back to this cavern. Many other chi practitioners had already fled here. Just now, he learnt that something major had happened during the herb gathering ceremony this time. However, he refused to back down. Instead, he gathered up the defeated chi practitioners, acting like he wanted to fight the demon. Li Qingshan asked out of curiosity, Do you really plan on staying here and fighting the demon? However, he sensed that the Qi practitioners who were not disciples of the burial mound mountain all became resentful when they heard that, but they dared not say anything. Of course, you have to stay behind too, said the first senior brother. The demons were terrifying, but they did not pose any life-threatening threat to a ninth-layer Qi practitioner like him who had the steel plate corpse to protect him. Even if he came across the strongest demons, he could retreat with ease. And before that, he had already gathered enough corpses. The burial mound mountain was different from the other two sections. What they cared about the most were not spiritual herbs, but corpses, the corpses of demons, and the corpses of humans. All the sects had suffered heavy losses in the herb-gathering ceremony this time, but on the other hand, it was also the perfect time for the burial mound mountain to rise up and completely overwhelm the green vine mountain and the pheasant's grace mountain. As long as they turned all these Qi practitioners into zombies and refined a few powerful corpse beasts, the burial mound mountain's strength would increase instead of falling. His position in the sect would be unshakable due to controlling multiple zombies in battle all year round. The disciples of the burial mound mountain possessed an eye for battle compared to the other two mountains. The first senior brother was one of the best. Having spent so much time with corpses, they had become even more indifferent to human emotions and morals. They carried out the saying of the success of a general rests on the bones of thousands to the fullest. Li Qingshan was unable to see through the first senior brother's complicated and dark thoughts for a moment. He only felt like he was up to no good. He swung the whale's ingestion of water and bellowed, "Do you think you can stop me?" The first senior brother was just about to give the order to kill one to warn the others. Songming cried out, "Yunyo Juxia!" Only a moment had passed since Li Qingshan leapt into the cavern, became enveloped by the corpse poison, and landed on the ground. After a close examination, he finally confirmed that the person before him was the Nyo Juxia, who had caused him to end up in such a state. Song Ming had been ostracized by the entire sect. No one was willing to travel with him, and it was even more impossible for him to enter the recorded spiritual lands. He could only advance carefully through the cavern with Ma Chaochuan, which was a blessing in disguise. He did not fall into Li Qingshan's trap. As soon as he sensed that something was amiss, he immediately fled back. It was similar to how he had escaped with a single strike from Li Qingshan back, then outside the proud sword manor. With that, there was a series of gasps in the cavern. The name Nyo Juxia had become renowned recently. There were not a lot of people who were wanted by the Three Mountains. It was even rumored that he had killed the first senior brother of the pheasant's Grace Mountain. Li Qingshan heard the whispers in the surroundings. He glanced past Song Ming and Ma Chaochuan and smiled. "So, I'm already wanted. I didn't know. There sure are a lot of familiar people today. Whatever. I've already killed a first senior brother anyway, so killing another one won't be too much." The first senior brother said, "Since you're an enemy of the Three Mountains, there's even less reason for me to spare you, disciples of the Green Vine Mountain, and the Pheasant's Grace Mountain. Why don't you get up and work with me to kill this thief and his accomplices?" Ma Chaochuan said, "He's not an accomplice. He was forced by that Nyo guy. Zijian, come over here." The first senior brother said, "Is there any place for you to speak here?" Yu Zijian said loudly, "You're the bad guys. I'm not going over." Just as they were about to draw their swords, a Qi practitioner rushed into the cavern. He flailed his arms and legs as he cried out miserably, "Monster! The monster is here. Run!" "What monster?" Songming grabbed him. "Skeleton." As soon as the Qi practitioner said that, blood-red flames surged out of his eye sockets, reducing him to a set of white bones in the blink of an eye. They scattered on the ground. Chapter 246. Only then did everyone realize that there was a small skeleton standing behind the Qi practitioner, holding a white bone sword that had pierced through the Qi practitioner's chest from behind. Slash! However, no one noticed when it had appeared there. It was like an inanimate object giving off no aura at all. After all, even zombies possessed corpse Qi. What is this demon? The scattered white bones melted into a ball of liquid flowing towards the white bone sword. The white bone sword was still an extremely ordinary dagger. There was nothing special about it, except that it was even tougher and heavier. However, it was still not enough to be used as a sword embryo for the Buddha slaying sword right now. Xiao En's eyes were burning with fire as he glanced at everyone. Everyone who had been glanced past felt their hearts shiver. It was actually even more terrifying than when they faced demons. The corner of Li Qingshan's lips curled up. He called out, "Everyone, run!" He grabbed Yu Zijian and rushed towards the entrance of the cave. Everyone had already become frightened. Suddenly seeing this strange monster, they lost all their will to fight. When they heard Li Qingshan's call, they immediately dispersed, fleeing towards the entrance of the cave in a hurry. The first senior brother was furious. He pointed at Li Qingshan and said, "Kill him!" Several dozen zombies surrounded him. Their long fingernails were like a forest of spears, stabbing towards Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan suddenly halted. A gust of wind swept over from behind. The iron plate corpse extended its claws, stabbing towards his back. However, he had anticipated this long ago. Without even looking back, he forcefully twisted his body and stabbed into the group of zombies, colliding into the chest of a zombie. It was a simple Iron Mountain lean, but when Li Qingshan used it, it was like a battering ram. There was a series of cracks, and the zombie was sent flying back, smashing into a few zombies behind it. All of their bones were broken, immobilizing them, creating a path. He took a step forward, about to break out of the encirclement. His two claws reached towards Li Qingshan's face. The sacred hall he had stopped taking these regular zombies seriously a long time ago. The only ones that could pose some threat to him were the dozen or so iron plate corpses. As long as he paused even slightly, the iron plate corpses would swarm him together. Although it was not dangerous, it would still be troublesome. He came to a halt and turned around again, charging left and right through the group of corpses. He was as swift as a tiger, specifically targeting the regular zombies. With just a few moves, he tore through the enemy formation. Although the iron-armored corpses possessed tremendous strength, their reactions were slow. They could not even touch a hair on him. Li Qingshan leaped towards the entrance of the cave. In front of him, two rogue cultivators had already rushed to the entrance of the cave, but a figure suddenly descended from the sky and blocked in front of them. Before they could react, two sharp claws pierced through their backs, dripping with blood. Steel plate corpse. Everyone shivered inside. The figure was the shining steel plate corpse that originally stood beside the first senior brother. Eldest senior brother said coldly, "I'll kill whoever dares to run." The steel plate corpse was like a supervisor, blocking everyone's path of escape. He stared at Li Qingshan with bloodthirsty eyes. He swung the whale's ingestion of water casually, and the crystal blade swung down viciously. The steel plate corpse brought its claws together and actually caught the ice blade between its hands, tossing it outwards. Li Qingshan was sent flying. He somersaulted in the air and landed gracefully. Their gazes towards the first senior brother were filled with reverence. They thought, "The Burial Mound Mountains, arts of refining corpses, sure, are impressive. Looks like we won't be able to defy this person today." The first senior brother was complacent inside. Just when he was about to say something, the skull flew up from the ground. The skull flew up from the ground, and the scattered bones pieced together. The neck bone, rib bone, and leg bone made a series of crackling sounds as the human form was restored. Li Qingshan stopped worrying as well. If he wanted to kill her, he would have to grind her to dust first. Yet right now, there was not even a single crack on her white bones. She had only purposefully spread her bones apart to avoid bearing too much force. Everyone, let's do it together. The first senior brother's expression became even colder. He had never heard of a monster like this before. Killing it would probably be difficult. At the same time, he controlled the steel plate corpse, but the steel plate corpse maintained its posture of swinging its claws as if it had frozen. It did not move at all. Only after a while did it slowly straighten itself out. However, the first senior brother was already in utter shock. His face became sheet white, and he actually broke out in cold sweat. That was because his connection with the steel plate corpse had already been severed. The steel plate corpse's actions, right now, were not under his control. First senior brother, what's wrong? The disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain had never seen their composed first senior brother show an expression like this. Most of the disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain had hearts of steel and were extremely cold. The first senior brother was one of the best among them. Even if a mountain collapsed right before his eyes, he might not be able to shock him so much. However, the steel plate corpse was equivalent to a second life for him, who knew how much effort he had poured into it. All of his strength, status, and authority had been entrusted to it, suddenly losing it all. Even he could not help but be thrown into disarray. At this moment, the steel plate corpse extended its arms and turned its head as if it was adapting. In the end, it turned towards the first senior brother. Its eyes shone with red light, like a ball of flames was burning inside. The first senior brother's heart sank to rock bottom. He stammered, but his voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. First senior brother, what did you say? A disciple beside him asked. Run. The steel plate corpse lunged over, and the first senior brother leapt up like a zombie. The disciple who asked the question was still confused. Why did the first senior brother send the steel plate corpse over? The steel plate corpse grabbed his shoulders with its claws and pulled hard, ripping him in half. Blood and slippery organs scattered on the ground. At this moment, the two huge skulls condensed from the skull prayer beads rolled over to the zombies that surrounded Li Qingshan. They opened their mouths and sprayed out flames. As if the flames had a mind of their own, they surged into the eyes, ears, mouths, and noses of the zombies. Like the steel plate corpse, all of the zombies stopped moving. Afterwards, like a well-trained army, they turned around together and lunged at the Qi practitioners. The weapons of the Burial Mound Mountain immediately became the nightmare of all Qi practitioners. The dozen or so indestructible iron plate corpses were the nightmare of nightmares. The technique flickered, but it was unable to stop the advance of the zombies. Cries and howls rose and fell. The dark underground cavern immediately became a living hell, and the zombies were the demons of hell. What's going on? Are the disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain trying to silence us? No, I don't know. Arg. Before the disciple of the Burial Mound Mountain had even finished speaking, the iron plate corpse that originally belonged to him had lunged at him and plunged its claw into his heart. The disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain completely relied on controlling the zombies to fight. Now that they had lost their zombies, they were like tigers without claws and teeth. Their battle prowess was even worse than other Qi practitioners. Some of them even tried to control the zombies blankly, but they all died a violent death. Immediately, no one doubted the disciples of the Burial Mound Mountain anymore, as the first senior brother was currently being chased around by his renowned steel plate corpse. He was in a horrible shape. A few zombies pushed a middle-aged man to the ground. The man felt pain in his arm, having been bitten by the zombies. All he knew was that he was dead, but the zombies dispersed together, lunging at the other chi practitioners. The pain from his wound vanished. He looked over in surprise, and his arm had already been set ablaze. The flames rapidly spread through his entire body, burning away all of his flesh and blood. In the blink of an eye, only a set of white bones remained. The blood-red flames flew into the skull's mouth. When the zombies bit down, they injected the blood-red flames in their bodies into the skull. That was something even more terrifying than corpse poison. With a swish, a streak of golden light pierced through the heads of over a dozen zombies, returning before an 8th-layer chi practitioner disciple. It was a golden pheasant's feather. He managed to maintain his composure with much difficulty. The disciples of the 3 mountains understood each other's moves very well. They knew that they could kill the zombies like this. Just when they were about to let out a sigh of relief, the zombies only stiffened before lunging over and drowning him, forming a small pile of corpses. Chapter 247. With an explosive bellow, there was a flash of golden light, and the pile of corpses scattered. The disciple of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain stood up again. As an 8th-layer chi practitioner, it was impossible for him to be injured by regular zombies. Whoosh! Suddenly, he felt a terrifying sword intent attack him from behind. He wanted to turn around, but it was already too late. Lowering his head, all he saw was the tip of a bone-white sword protruding from his chest, which he quickly pulled back, little, and moved through the crowd like a ghost, searching for openings and killing powerful chi practitioners. As long as he found an opening, the sword style he had learnt from the cursive sword calligraphy would be enough to kill them in a single strike. Within the chaos, Li Qingshan had already entered the cave with the dumbfounded Yu Zijian. Not a single zombie would come to make trouble for him anymore. Right when he was about to leave, he suddenly sensed something. Turning around, he saw the first senior brother flying towards the cave as well. His clothes were tattered, and he was in a horrible shape. Close behind him, the steel plate corpse pursued him relentlessly. Li Qingshan smiled. He raised the whale's ingestion of water, and ice condensate water surged out, immediately condensing into a thick wall of ice. On the other side of the ice wall, the first senior brother opened his mouth, as if he was cursing aloud. He had even gathered all of his powerful true chi, like a roaring lion. Afterwards, he struck the ice wall with a thump. His face twisted as he slowly slid down. Li Qingshan grinned. The ice condensed from ice condensate water was as tough as high-grade spiritual artifacts. How could it be destroyed so easily? Whoosh! Through the ice wall. The first senior brother watched helplessly as Li Qingshan turned around and fled, vanishing into the dark cavern. He did not even have the time to curse, as the steel plate corpse's claws were already inches away. The howls were sealed in the ice and rapidly pulled away. Yu Zijian widened her eyes, but all she saw was darkness. Not only had Li Qingshan sealed off the first senior brother, but he had sealed off all the chi practitioners' paths of retreat as well. Niu Juxia? What's wrong? Li Qingshan lowered his head and looked at Yu Zijian as if he already knew what she wanted to say. However, she shook her head soon afterwards. Nothing. She furrowed her brows as if she was deep in thought. What she had experienced in the underground today had greatly impacted her pure mind. If she could comprehend something from it, it would be a treasure more valuable than any spiritual stones or spiritual herbs. The light flowed into the gloomy depths like water. Li Qingshan stopped and placed Yu Zijian down. The exit is up ahead. You can leave by yourself. Yu Zijian asked, "What about you?" Li Qingshan said, "Of course I have to go back underground." But the underground is very dangerous now. In Yu Zijian's eyes, the underground was hell. There were even terrifying monsters. When she heard how Niu Juxia wanted to return to a place like that, she immediately panicked. For me, the top is more dangerous than the bottom. I'm wanted by the 3 mountains. Those 3 old coots are probably all up there. Yu Zijian said. Chenglu is up there too. You know that she's a good friend of mine. She has an elder brother who's a commander of the Hawkwolf Guard. You've heard of the Hawkwolf Guard before, right? Anyway, he's a very impressive person, and he's very amiable too. Let's beg him to put in a good word for you. Well, definitely. Her voice gradually weakened. She was simple, but she was not stupid. After what she had gone through today, she understood the viciousness of human nature even better. She was just a penniless girl, so why should she beg those important figures for help? And even if they were willing to help, could they really guarantee Niu Juxia's safety? Li Qingshan smiled. Thank you for your kind intentions. Sacred Hall. She covered her face with her arm and lowered her head as she began to sob. Li Qingshan asked, Why are you crying? I'm so useless, she sobbed. If you're useless, why would I save you? Don't worry, I have my ways. I won't die. You should go. Really? Yu Zijian rubbed her eyes forcefully with her sleeve and raised her head. Her eyes were still red, and her face was streaked with tears, but it was filled with hope. Really? Li Qingshan saw how she behaved, and his heart softened. He turned her around and pushed her gently from behind. Stop being so fussy. She staggered a few steps before suddenly stopping. She turned around and sucked in a deep breath as if she had made a great decision. I'll stay behind and assist you. She pressed down on her sword and stood there. The light behind her added a layer of light to her, which actually gave her a graceful bearing. Snot, Li Qingshan said helplessly. What? It's almost flowing out. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. Yu Zijian sniffled hard in a hurry, and that tiny bit of graceful bearing vanished. Li Qingshan turned around and strode underground. Yu Zijian called out from behind, Oi, I'm serious. Don't go. Li Qingshan had already vanished. Only his voice drifted over, echoing through the cave. Let's talk about it after you've mastered your divine arts. Yu Zijian chased after him a few steps. All she heard was her own footsteps, the suffocating pressure, and fear filled her heart once again. She gulped and backed away slowly. The jagged rocks seemed like demonic beasts. No, she felt like she was in the stomach of a huge beast. She had no one to rely on, and she was all alone. Suddenly, there was a violent tremor from underground, as if a huge beast had flipped over. The demonic beasts all seemed to come alive, brandishing their claws and fangs as if they were about to lunge over. She cried out and turned around to flee. Li Qingshan felt the violent tremor as well. It was rather familiar. Yes, he had felt the same tremor when he first met Millipede in the manor outside Salt Mountain City. Wasn't he sleeping? Had something happened to him? Li Qingshan sped up and rushed underground. He arrived before the cave. A huge hole had already cracked open in the ice wall, covered in blood. Only a few Qi practitioners remained in the cave, huddled in a corner. They were filled with despair. The zombies had completely vanished, and only 3 iron plate corpses remained. It was possible to imagine just how intense the Qi practitioners' resistance was before they died. However, whether it be the zombies or their corpses, they had all been reduced to nothing, becoming nourishment for Little and wielded the white bone sword and stared at the cave that led underground. The first senior brother was heavily injured and had fled towards there, but she did not send the steel plate corpse after him. Chapter 248. who knew how many times more violent the collision this time was compared to when he slammed into the ice wall. Not a single bone in his body was intact. He only relied on his true chi to stay alive. The wind whistled past his ears as he was pushed back rapidly by the huge figure. He tried his best to open his eyes, but he discovered that he had returned to the cavern. He saw a skeletal monster, and beside it was the steel plate corpse that he had spent countless efforts to refine. Fuck. With that, a pink gas swallowed him, and he lost his final sliver of consciousness. His segmented body was a gorgeous pink. Who knew how many legs there were on the sides, moving quickly and rhythmically? He moved with startling speed. Only a blurry streak of pink light could be seen. It was like an underground train whistling past, kicking up a violent gust of wind that made his clothes rustle. This was the first time Li Qingshan had seen Milliped's original form, but he did not see his form. Instead, he saw a raging river of demon qi. This was the first time Li Qingshan had experienced Milliped's strength. Normally, this guy who only ate and slept did not seem dignified at all, but he was a demon general through and through. He was a powerful demon general, at that. The remaining Qi practitioners all held their breaths as they watched this sight with widened, lifeless eyes. If everything they had experienced before was a nightmare, then what they felt right now was like something even more terrifying had barged into their nightmare. Their thoughts were immediately cut off, and they directly fainted from the impact of the demon qi. Millipede left suddenly. Li Qingshan and looked at one another. They had both seen the green figure chase after Millipede. The person who could escape so easily. Was it? Oh no. Li Qingshan's expression changed drastically. If he went any further up, he would reach the surface. There, Millipede would lose the protection of the treaty and become prey that human cultivators could hunt down as they pleased. And right now, there were 3 Foundation establishment cultivators waiting for him above. Coupled with the unknown green figure, he could smell the heavy scent of a scheme. Yu Zijian collapsed on the snow. The sunlight was so blinding that she could not open her eyes. The light enveloped her from all directions, making her dizzy. Vaguely, she could hear people running and calling out. More people have come out. She slowly opened her eyes. A dozen or so Qi practitioners were lying on the ground not far away, their bodies drenched in blood. Some looked numb. Some were still crying. They were all independent cultivators. Because they could not choose the best path or the best spiritual land like the disciples of the 3 mountains, they even had to set off later. Instead, it was a blessing in disguise, allowing them to avoid certain death traps. However, they had also experienced numerous dangers before they managed to escape. A new lease of life after a disaster. Before she could see these people clearly, 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking the sun. The 3 elders asked frantically, "How's it going down there?" Yu Zijian raised her head in confusion. All she saw was their expressions. Similar to the surviving Qi practitioners, they were filled with a gloomy aura of decay. The corner of the lone grave elder's mouth constantly twitched. The golden pheasant elder's eyes were bloodshot, and the green vine elder, who had always been composed, had lost his usual composure. If the disciples of the 3 mountains that had died in the beginning had already made their hearts bleed, then the blood that flowed afterwards was basically unstoppable. The specks of light on the underground mental map were like flying sparks, extinguishing in large swathes. Chapter 249. Only the Will Millipede's long, sharp leg whistled through the air, stabbing over like a spear. The zombie dodged it with great agility, basically no different from a living person. The lone grave elder stood nearby, with a sunken face. At this level of refining corpses, he no longer refined mindless puppets. There was no need for him to control them. He had dug up 1,000 graves and dug out the corpse of an ancient disciple of the school of the military from a general's grave. Back then, the corpse was close to turning into a zombie, so he spent a great deal of effort to suppress its original consciousness, refining it into an ancient bronze corpse general in the end. Not only could it avoid fire and water, but it also possessed the battle awareness from when it was alive. It was equivalent to a Foundation establishment cultivator. When he fought, he only needed to summon it, and it would be equivalent to fighting 2 against 1. The ancient bronze corpse general's punch was ineffective, so it threw another punch. Bang, 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 bang. It was like thunder. The armor caved in and cracked, oozing with blood. Millipede struggled in pain. Suddenly, he broke free from a green vine and bit at the golden pheasant above him. The golden pheasant flapped its wings and was about to take off when it suddenly felt something tighten behind it. Millipede had caught the pheasant's tail feathers firmly, and with a swing of his head, he fell towards the wall. The strength was unstoppable. The golden pheasant elder was shocked. The demon general's strength was actually so great. Filled with resentment, he cut off his arm. Golden feathers drifted down from the sky. The golden pheasant soared into the air, circling above the pit. Most of its tail feathers were gone now. It was basically bald. The golden pheasant elder called out, "Green vine, when did your techniques become so useless? Are you trying to get me killed?" "It's easier said than done. This wretched demon is far too strong. Even I can't last for too long. Hurry up and kill him." The green vine elder gritted his teeth and squeezed out those words. His face was bright red. He used his spiritual chi to wrestle against Millipede, so he endured the greatest pressure. The golden pheasant circled around the pillar of smoke and arrived high in the sky. It shone with resplendent light, constantly gathering golden light and gradually blurring the golden pheasant's shape. It was like a miniature sun had appeared in the sky. Millipede instinctively felt a great sense of danger. He lowered his head and spat out a mouthful of pink venom at the ancient bronze corpse general. The ancient bronze corpse general didn't dare to take it head-on and retreated 100 feet away. The venom had already corroded a large pit in front of it. Half of the green vines were instantly corroded after coming into contact with the venom. Millipede mustered all of his strength and swung his 1,000 feet downwards at the same time. He was about to break free. Wood grows and grass grows, growing and multiplying without end. The green vine elder bellowed out, and he erupted with dazzling green light. Even his hair and skin were dyed green by the green light, as if he was no longer human, but a statue carved from green wood. It reflected the golden pheasant elder in the sky. Green vines grew madly from the ground, and the cliff wrapping around Millipede like a giant cocoon. Vines wither and trees grow old, wither and flourish change. All the green vines were drained of water and turned a withered yellow. It was as if the withered vines that had grown for countless years in the depths of the mountains and on the cliffs were the most tenacious. Even if a sword or saber were to slash it, it would not leave a single mark. The rate at which the venom corroded the vines immediately slowed down drastically. Millipede was trapped in the cage of withered vines. At this moment, a bird's cry rang out in the surroundings. The golden sun fell from the sky. The golden pheasant folded its wings, with its beak at the front and its tail feathers at the back. It charged towards the immobilized Millipede with a long tail of flames. The ancient vine corpse general returned to the lone grave elder. He raised his head and watched on in shock. He was fearless if he faced the golden pheasant elder or the green vine elder alone, but if the two of them worked together, he would be dead for sure even if he had that move. The three mountains had all been heavily injured, but it affected him the least. Apart from his zombie-like heart and the severing of his emotions, he was currently considering something startlingly similar to the first senior brother of the Burial Mound Mountain. If he could refine the corpse of a demon general into a corpse demon, his strength would definitely grow drastically. It would even surpass the Golden Pheasant Elder and the Green Vine Elder. It would not be impossible for him to merge the three mountains into a single mountain. Hua Songzan exhaled gently. She could go back and report this to the higher-ups, who knew what kind of disturbance the death of a demon general would cause. Probably even Wang Pushi would not be able to bear the responsibility, so she could only come. At this moment, another demon chi rushed into the air. Hua Songzan's expression suddenly changed. There were actually still demons bold enough to appear at a time like this. He squinted his eyes and peered through the mist, but he failed to see the demon. The Green Vine Elder and the Lone Grave Elder felt a violent tremor from beneath their feet. The tremor was no ordinary earthquake. It contained a powerful force, enough to shake them up. They leapt up at the same time, only to see large swathes of cracks appear at the bottom of the pit. The cracks rapidly spread up the cliff. The vines had already taken root in the ground, so they began to shake as well. However, it was already too late. Boom! The golden rooster fell, and a loud sound rang out. Tens of thousands of golden lights shot out from the heaven crater, and the cracked rocks collapsed with a rumbling sound. It was like a clap of thunder, and the yellow smoke that filled the air was mixed with pink poisonous gas. The heaven crater was like a huge pot that was boiling violently. The resplendent golden light was so bright that even Hua Songzan was unable to see what was happening in the pit. However, the demon general's demon chi had not vanished. The Golden Pheasant Elder had missed. Another tall figure could be vaguely seen amidst the smoke and dust. Li Qingshan had completely assumed his demon form. He had already reached over 40 meters tall, and he gasped for air. Millipede lay behind him. He had finally broken free from the vines and regained his freedom. A great hole had been ripped open in the round pit. It was possible to imagine what the outcome would have been if he had been struck by the attack. Fortunately, not even the Golden Pheasant Elder could fully control the attack. When Li Qingshan and Little N arrived at the exit, they sensed 3 Foundation establishment cultivators attacking Millipede from all directions with their spiritual energy. Every single one of them was more powerful than him, but he would never leave a friend to die. He immediately cast aside his own life and death. Just when he was about to rush out and assist Millipede, he was stopped by Little and who told him not to panic. After calming down, Li Qingshan held his breath and waited. He wanted to see if he could find a good opportunity to heavily injure a Foundation establishment cultivator. However, he also knew just how rare an opportunity like that was. However, in the final moment of life and death, he ripped open the ground and cut off the roots of the vines. Afterwards, he grabbed Millipede's tail and pulled hard, avoiding the Golden Pheasant Elder's killing blow. That indistinct human figure caused the hearts of the 3 Foundation establishment cultivators to shrink. Could it be that another demon general had arrived? They all cautiously made their way to the other side of the pit. As they recovered their spiritual chi, they stared at Li Qingshan cautiously. Li Qingshan ignored them. He turned around and punched Millipede's head. He yelled, "You idiot! Wake up!" This seemed to further prove the 3 elders' suspicions. If he were a regular demon, why would he be bold enough to attack a demon general? However, while the demon chi was tremendous, it did not seem to belong to a demon general. Millipede shook his head and seemed to clear up slightly. He hissed at Li Qingshan and said with demon chi, "You're here. My head hurts." Li Qingshan replied with demon chi, You deserve the pain. Why don't you turn into a human and come with me? Oh, with a shake of his body, Millipede reverted to his bare head. He clutched his stomach. My stomach hurts too. Without another word, Li Qingshan grabbed him and shoved him into the hole. Oh no, they're trying to escape. Plants grow and multiply, the green vine elder said. Li Qingshan also wanted to crawl into the hole, but he saw countless vines pierce through the rock and weave together like a net, sealing up the entrance and separating him from Millipede. Millipede ripped apart the vines with a furious roar. However, Li Qingshan sighed and said, "Run!" A fierce gust of wind surged behind him. Golden light projected him against the wall, and the spirit turtle's profound shell rose up automatically. With a few clangs, the pheasant's claws that were as sharp as high-grade spiritual artifacts gripped the spirit turtle's profound shell firmly. The golden pheasant spread its wings and grabbed Li Qingshan, taking off into the air. The golden pheasant lowered its head. Its furious, golden eyes stared at Li Qingshan. You still want to run? If you run, I'll use you as a scapegoat. Vaguely, the golden pheasant elder could be seen. The pit rapidly shrank below their feet, while the green vine elder and the lone grave elder seemed to be extremely dazzling no matter how far away they were from each other. Li Qingshan immediately understood the danger he was in. His blood surged, but his mind became calmer instead. He sucked in a deep breath and responded with the tiger demon's fierce roar. The fierce wind carried sound waves, and the sound waves filled the fierce wind, all slamming into the golden pheasant. With a shudder of golden light, the pheasant's claws loosened, and Li Qingshan fell out of the sky. Before he had even landed, countless thick vines extended over from the surroundings of the pit like arms, wrapping around the spirit turtle's profound shell and forming a ball of vines. Under the control of the Foundation establishment cultivators, the ground immediately became even more distant than the sky, cutting off the deep earth. Li Qingshan immediately had nowhere to run. He was extremely tall, but before 3 Foundation establishment cultivators, he seemed like a small, skinny child before 3 burly men. He seemed so fragile. The 3 elders rode the wind, circling around the ball of vines. The green vine elder said, "Oh no, it's just a regular demon." Although its form and strength were very unusual, it was without a doubt a demon from its demon chi, who knew how far off it was from their original target. The 3 of them had worked together and schemed against the unsuspecting, yet they still failed to kill the demon general and avenge themselves. They had been utterly humiliated. Their faces immediately twisted. God damn it! The lone grave elder slammed the spirit turtle's profound shell emotionlessly. With a boom, the spirit turtle's profound shell trembled, but it was unscathed. The 3 elders were all surprised, but they became even more furious. The golden pheasant elder said, "Shatter his shell. I want to skin him alive and drain his blood. I want to rip him to pieces to appease my hatred." The green vine elder thought of something. "Perhaps we can draw out the demon general." The golden pheasant elder said, "Green vine, you're dreaming. Demons have always been emotionless. They only know how to struggle for survival. Carapace demons are the most foolish. There's no such thing as friendship." As he said that, he pecked the spirit turtle's profound shell viciously. The ancient bronze corpse general threw a punch. The spirit turtle's profound shell trembled. No matter how tough it was, just how long could it last under the combined attacks of 3 Foundation establishment cultivators? Demons really don't have the concept of friendship. Li Qingshan's words surprised the 3 elders. They're just acting on their own accord. A huge, pink insect leapt up as hard as it could, leaving the ground. Like a carp leaping out of the water, it bit down on the spirit turtle's profound shell. Chapter 250. The Battle of the Sinkhole. Wah! Zijian, look, the monster has come out again. We've come to save the monster. Hua Chenglu grabbed Yu Zijian's arm and shook it violently. To be continued, 89 free novel reading. Hua Sungzan smacked her head. Don't move around. The three of them sat on a paper crane. The paper crane was covered in inscriptions. It flapped its wings like a real crane, soaring through the air. After her initial fright, Hua Chenglu had already calmed down. She had no idea what was going on, so she completely treated the battle below as a show. Yu Zijian asked, "Do demons have ties of friendship too? As long as they're born in this world, how can they be emotionless? I just never thought there would be friends of life and death like this among different demons." Hua Sungzan said suddenly. His eyes were filled with emotion. Yu Zijian said, "Was it right for that person to slay demons?" "Of course. Even humans have to kill one another, let alone other races. If it weren't for the oppression of humans, why would demons band together? Killing one another is the norm. As long as they're born in this world, how can they not kill one another?" Hua Sungzan's expression turned grim again. Friendship? Killing one another? Right or wrong? Yu Zijian's mind was a mess. At this moment, the battle had already begun in the sinkhole. Hua Chenglu watched on, without blinking. She did not divert her attention to listen to Hua Sungzan at all. Millipede grabbed the spirit turtle's profound shell with his mouth and pulled Li Qingshan out of the ball of vines. The three elders were overjoyed. The golden pheasant flapped its wings, and the green vines grew. The ancient bronze corpse general leapt up with corpse chi. The encirclement was complete. They definitely could not let this wretched demon escape this time. Millipede twisted his body. Like a dragon swinging its tail, he swept through everything and struck the golden pheasant viciously. The golden light shattered, and the golden pheasant elder was like a broken kite. He slammed into the rock face and became deeply embedded, leaving behind only feathers. At this moment, the ancient bronze corpse general rushed forward. Li Qingshan dismissed the spirit turtle's profound shell and gathered all of his demon chi. Like a surging river, he threw a punch without a care. The ancient bronze corpse general felt as though there was a huge dark cloud shrouding its head. Then a black bolt of lightning struck down. That fist was no ordinary fist. It was as big as a boulder. No matter how skilled one was in martial arts, it would be difficult to dodge it, not to mention in midair. The ancient bronze corpse general's ferocity was also stimulated. It let out a roar and bared its fangs as it similarly punched forward. The lone grave elder sneered in his heart, an ant trying to shake a tree, overestimating himself. He actually dared to compete with the ancient bronze corpse general. Did he really think that he was a demon general? Monsters are such stupid creatures. They think that they can win just because they are tall. In the future, when they are refined into monster corpses, they might be a little smarter under my control. The two fists collided in midair. The corpse chi and demonic chi collided fiercely. The smoke and poisonous gas were scattered, forming a hole. The lone grave elder was slightly surprised. He could actually fight against the ancient bronze corpse general with brute force. However, after a moment, the ancient bronze corpse general could no longer hold on. With a loud bang, it fell to the ground, creating a huge crater. Li Qingshan had cultivated the second layer of the ox demon. He had a huge advantage with his figure alone. Furthermore, he was in a higher position. If he lost to a corpse general in a contest of strength, even if he didn't hang himself, oxen would. Although the ancient bronze corpse general had lost, it did not suffer any injuries. It roared furiously. Just as it straightened its body, the dark cloud descended from the sky. How could Li Qingshan let go of such a great opportunity? He descended from the sky and ruthlessly stomped on the ancient Bronze Corps general's body. The bottom of the crater rippled like the surface of the sea. Thousands of tons of rocks flew into the air. Only the ground that the hooves stepped on continued to sink. Ox Demon Trample, innate ability. All the destructive force was concentrated on the ancient Bronze Corps general. After passing through its body, it spread to the surrounding ground. Cracks immediately appeared on the ancient Bronze Corps general's bronze armor, which was like an iron wall, and it let out a distorted sound. In reality, the internal damage suffered by the ancient Bronze Corps general was far greater than what it looked like on the surface. The bronze armor was extremely effective against sharp weapons like flying swords and knives, but it was much less effective against the most primitive and barbaric blunt weapons. In the ancient battlefields on Earth, as armor technology developed, the weapons of the valiant generals were constantly changing as well. When swords and knives could not cut through the armor, a hammer would smash the enemy's internal organs, causing them to vomit 3 liters of blood. Li Qingshan raised his hoof, but he would never be foolish enough to give his enemy any opportunities. He used the ox demon tramples again, and a demon with ox horns and a tiger's tail trampled about madly. The ground was like boiling water, rising and falling. Above the sinkhole, the vines tried their best to reach towards Millipede, trying to bind him again. However, Millipede was prepared this time, and there was a certain distance between him and the ground. It would take the vines some time to reach him. That's right, Millipede said. Millipede broke free from the vines and slammed his tail against the wall. Another huge gap appeared in the crater, and Millipede used this force to charge towards the green vine elder. He moved with startling speed as his sharp mouthparts were on full display. The green vine elder was shocked. As the sect master of the Green Vine Elder, it had already been many years since he last clashed with someone. His powers were great, but he was still old and feeble after all. How could he engage in close combat with such a terrifying demon? He flew up in a hurry, dodging and fleeing. Millipede suddenly curled up, wrapping around the Green Vine Elder a few times before shrinking into a ball. He used his colossal body to wrap around the Green Vine Elder. His thousands of legs were like spears, thrusting towards the Green Vine Elder from every direction under the powerful propulsion of his joints. As long as he managed to land a hit, poison would pour in and corrode his body very quickly. The wood spirit protects the withered wood. The Green Vine Elder formed a seal with his hands, and he became completely wrapped up in a piece of withered wood. His insect legs stabbed into it, producing a series of thumps. The withered wood was condensed from pure, with spiritual chi, but under the corrosion of the insect legs and the poisonous gas, it was rapidly depleted. The Green Vine Elder said in shock, "Save me, fellows!" Without the restraints of the vines, Millipede immediately unleashed his terrifying strength, demonstrating the great strength of a carapace demon general. The golden pheasant flapped its wings and flew up once again, landing on the ball of insects and pecking wildly. The golden pheasant elder threw his life on the line, going all out with his spiritual chi as he pecked bloody holes into the carapace. If these holes landed on a human cultivator, they would have been fatal, disemboweled wounds. However, Millipede's body was colossal, so these wounds were only minor wounds. With the powerful life force of carapace demons, he healed extremely quickly. However, most of the Green Vine Elder's spiritual chi had been depleted. Wood splinters flew out from the piece of withered wood, turning back into spiritual chi and dispersing. In the blink of an eye, it had become much thinner. He was about to be pierced by the thousands of insect legs and engulfed by the poisonous gas. In the blink of an eye, the tables had turned. Even Hua Sengzan could not help but sigh in amazement. Carapace demon generals really are impressive. If it were not for the fact that the techniques of the three elders could work together, especially the green vine elder's vines that could restrain its movements, it really would have been difficult for three regular foundation establishment cultivators to deal with it. They could even end up dying from the slightest carelessness. Hua Qinglu asked in surprise, "Brother, are the three old seniors going to lose?" Although she disliked the green vine elder, she could not help but mourn the deaths of powerful human cultivators at the hands of demons. Hua Sengzan shook his head. That mixed-blood demon has only gained the upper hand temporarily. How can he actually defeat Foundation establishment cultivators? As long as we kill him and regroup, we'll be victorious. He suddenly glanced at the clouds. And that person hadn't even fought yet. He probably had not anticipated this earlier either, which almost allowed the demon general to escape. However, he would never make the same mistake a second time. The lone grave elder's expression finally changed. He struggled to believe that the ancient bronze corpse general he had spent so much effort on was being overwhelmed by a mere demon. The ancient bronze corpse general should have dodged a long time ago, but the ox demon tramples had a powerful tremor effect. Although each tremor only affected the ancient bronze corpse general for a moment, it was enough for Li Qingshan to use the ox demon tramples a second time. The ancient bronze corpse general was clearly extremely powerful, but due to a moment of carelessness, Li Qingshan had defeated it in a single strike. This was clearly an unintentional move, but it also seemed like a very deep plan. Li Qingshan was a true fighter. Normally, he was not particularly clever, but in battle, he would always be able to erupt with 120% of his battle prowess. Die, wretched demon! The lone grave elder, who had not directly fought the entire time, finally took action. He also wore a bronze bangle on his skinny wrist, but it had a heavy luster. Who knew how many times better it was than his first senior brothers? The inscriptions on the bronze bangle lit up, and 12 steel plate corpses appeared in a neat formation, charging towards Li Qingshan. With just the 12 steel plate corpses, dealing with regular demons would be as easy as pie. The lone grave elder had not summoned them right from the beginning because the steel plate corpses were not particularly useful against demon generals, and they could be corroded and destroyed very easily by the poisonous gas. Now that he saw how Li Qingshan wanted to destroy what was so precious to him, he immediately unleashed his full strength. The steel plate corpses lunged over together. Li Qingshan frowned. He could sense that although the corpse chi on the ancient bronze corpse general beneath his feet had been shaken away many times, it had not been fatally damaged. If he used the spirit turtle's profound shell, he would obviously be safe for now, but the ancient bronze corpse general would be able to break free, which would free up the lone grave elder to save the green vine elder. He needed to make time for Millipede. Li Qingshan grabbed a steel plate corpse and stabbed its neck with his thumb. His sharp claws forcefully pierced the steel armor, and black corpse chi poured out. The steel plate corpse immediately collapsed, no longer moving at all. It was like a rag doll, tossed aside by Li Qingshan. However, the other steel plate corpses had already used this opportunity to lunge towards Li Qingshan. Some climbed onto his shoulders to strike at Li Qingshan's ears. Some bit at Li Qingshan's neck viciously, and some grabbed onto Li Qingshan's thigh in an attempt to influence his movements so that the ancient bronze corpse general could break free. Li Qingshan was like a tree covered in monkeys. He extended his hand, and the steel plate corpses would crawl away to wreak havoc in other places with great agility. His entire body itched and ached, but even the claws of the steel plate corpses struggled to rip through his leather that was 100 times tougher than steel armor. To be continued. Chapter 2:51. Even with that being the case, the steel plate corpses still caused quite a lot of trouble for Li Qingshan. It was a pity that Little and was not here, or dealing with the steel plate corpses would be a piece of cake. Originally, he had gotten Little and to temporarily hide underground, ready to provide support at a crucial moment and deal a fatal blow to the enemy. However, after a few powerful collisions and the destruction from the ox demon tramples, the entrance to the pit had already completely collapsed. Thousands of tons of earth and rock fell down, basically ending the herb-gathering ceremony of the three mountains. Little and was trapped underneath too, so he probably would not be able to help out for a while. Seeing how the steel plate corpses were unable to defeat Li Qingshan immediately, the lone grave elder produced a tiny bone staff in his hand. There was a tiny skull at the top of the bone staff. As he swung it, a streak of red light shot out from the eye sockets of the skull. Li Qingshan felt an intense sense of danger. He did not want to experience the full-powered strike of a Foundation establishment cultivator. However, if he used the spirit turtle's profound shell and let the zombie below him break free, the situation would probably become even more difficult. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. A steel plate corpse blocked Li Qingshan's path. It just happened to appear in the path of the red light. Without a sound, half of the steel plate corpse was immediately dissolved. The lone grave elder was surprised. All of the steel plate corpses were under his control, so why had another one appeared out of nowhere? Before he knew it, a black hole had appeared in the ground. The steel plate corpse had emerged from the hole. Underground, under Little Anne's command, the boulder viper unleashed its ability to tunnel through the ground, creating a deep hole. However, it was impossible for them to take part in the battle. Sacred Haltu skulls emerged, spraying flames at Li Qingshan. The lone grave elder was alarmed. He had no idea whether the newcomer was a friend or a foe. Li Qingshan did not dodge at all. Like he was bathing, he allowed the flames to cleanse his body. Wherever the flames reached, the steel plate corpses all fell down. The flames then moved towards the ancient bronze corpse general beneath Li Qingshan's feet, but they were blocked by a layer of black corpse chi. The ancient bronze corpse general sensed great danger and struggled with all its might. The lone grave elder sensed that his connection with all the steel plate corpses had been severed. His expression changed, and he called out, "What wretched demon are you? Show yourself." Red light flashed through the eyes of all the steel plate corpses. They stood up together and lunged at the lone grave elder. The lone grave elder felt a chill run down his spine. He had never seen such a strange sight in all his years of cultivation. If the zombies that he had painstakingly refined could be taken away so easily, then there would be no such thing as refined corpses in this world. Just what exactly was that flame? It actually had such an effect. As the lone grave elder retreated, scarlet beams of light shot out again and again, striking the three steel plate corpses. Most of them immediately melted away, but the corpses immediately burst into flames and merged into the skull. The lone grave elder's heart ached. It had been very difficult to refine these steel plate corpses. He never thought there would be a day when he would destroy them in his hands. Black mist rose up from beneath his feet, lifting him into the air. The steel plate corpses missed. Exerting his strength, he leapt high into the air and touched the black clouds. However, he was unable to fly and could only descend. Sacred Hall. At this moment, the two skull prayer beads became even larger. They circled around and caught all the steel plate corpses before rushing towards the lone grave elder again. They were like two transport ships. Li Qingshan knew it was impossible for him and Little and to kill a Foundation establishment cultivator. However, as long as he kept them busy slightly and gave Millipede the opportunity to kill one of them, they would be able to take them out one by one afterwards. Even if they could not kill them all, they would be able to leave with ease at the very least. Only a thin layer of withered would remain on the green vine elder. He called out, "Save me, fellow." This time, he was not calling out to the golden pheasant or the lone grave elders. Demons run amok, wreaking havoc in the world. I, Fu Qingjin of the Sword Collection Palace, have specially come to assist you in purging demons. A man's voice suddenly rang out in the air, but it was not as passionate and heroic as it should have been. Instead, it was rather pointless and bored, as if purging demons did not interest him too much. Tens of thousands of rays of green light descended from the sky and covered the entire pit. Time seemed to freeze. An unstoppable power chilled Li Qingshan's heart. He looked around. The collapsed, abandoned buildings and palaces rose from the ground, seeming both real and illusory. A streak of green light shot through the sky, like a soundless bolt of lightning, yet also like a horrific wound. Millipede cried out in pain and fell out of the sky, landing heavily in the ruins. A huge wound appeared on his back as blood flowed out like a stream. Even the toughest piece of armor on his back was unable to block the power of the flash of green light. In the sky above the green ruins, Fu Qingjin stood with his sword in hand. His ancient green robes ruffled in the wind. The green vine elder, who had narrowly escaped death, was still fearful. He bowed at the sky. "Thank you for saving my life, fellow." The golden pheasant elder and the lone grave elder bowed deeply as well. Fu Qingjin's indifferent gaze swept past the three of them like a king looking at his useless subjects. Their faces felt like they had been cut by a sword, burning with pain. This person is so powerful. Hua Qinglu was filled with admiration. "It's you," Yu Zijian exclaimed. Fu Qingjin turned around, and his gaze immediately became much gentler. It was as if he had gone from a proud and aloof king back to the downtrodden swordsman. However, he only nodded and said nothing. Instead, he said to Hua Sengzan, "You've already fulfilled your duty. However, no one can guarantee eternal peace. With your talent, if you're willing to resign from your position as a lackey, you'll be able to accomplish quite a bit in the future chaos." He was comforting Hua Sengzan for his failure, even praising him a lot, but he was like a senior lecturing a junior. He even directly referred to the Hawkwolf Guard as a lackey, and they were not too far apart in age. "Eternal peace has nothing to do with me. What do you want to do, sir?" "Just go ahead and do it. Be careful of letting him escape again, and it'll be embarrassing." Hua Sengzan recovered his indolent attitude. However, Hua Qinglu could sense that Hua Sengzan had lost his usual composure when he faced this person. He had no choice but to deal with him like this. "Yeah, what does it have to do with me?" Fu Qingjin was not annoyed. He let out a gentle sigh as if he was deeply lamenting. Suddenly, he came to his senses and called out, "The rise and fall of the world is everyone's responsibility. How can you avoid your responsibility?" He seemed like he was talking to Hua Sengzan, but also like he was talking to himself. With a flash of green light, Fu Qingjin vanished. Hua Qinglu pointed at her head and whispered, "Is there something wrong with this person?" Yu Zijian said, "He seems very sad." Hua Sengzan asked, "Do you know each other?" Yu Zijian shook her head, but she felt like she had seen him somewhere before. It was not on the green vine mountain beside the pond, but in an even more distant time. Hua Sengzan lowered his head in thought. Sure enough, the green ruins sword had appeared. It was no surprise that Fu Qingjin possessed such strength. He had already guessed this a long time ago. None of the figures involved would be weaker than the first heavenly tribulation, yet they had only sent him a Qi practitioner. They probably did not have the determination to stop this in the first place. Perhaps they were just compromising over the matter regarding the soaring dragon elder. The green ruins sword proved this point even further. There were very few disciples who accepted this method, but they could often pick out some amazing people from the sea of people. These people were like unpolished gems. They often didn't seem to have any special cultivation aptitude. They should have no fate with cultivation and could only take up mortal jobs. Once they received guidance and set foot on the path of cultivation, they would immediately be like a dragon that had entered the ocean, soaring into the sky. If he had guessed correctly, Chenglu had instead climbed up the social ladder. Although the Hua family possessed some power in the Clear River Prefecture, it was nothing compared to the Sword Collection Palace. His thoughts immediately extended to an extremely distant place. He thought about how he could use this information to benefit the Hua family. The battle below was instead no longer within the scope of his concern. The outcome of the battle had already been determined anyway. Fu Qingjin appeared in the green ruins, standing on a pillar that had been broken in half. The pillar would require several dozen people to wrap their arms around it. It was possible to imagine just how grand the palace it supported in the past was. The Sword Collection Palace. Li Qingshan's eyes narrowed. Fu Qingjin overlapped with a certain figure in his memories. Although Oxen had casually wiped him out, the sharp sword Qi still remained in his heart. He dared not forget about it. You've heard of him before? Fu Qingjin turned around and asked. He had just raised the green ruins, sword before stopping again. The sacred hall. Before Li Qingshan could reply, the ancient bronze corpse general finally broke free. Its bronze armor was in tatters, and many of its bones were twisted and broken. It roared furiously at Li Qingshan, about to lunge at him. Fu Qingjin glanced at it, and its roar immediately stopped. The ancient bronze corpse general fled in a hurry, running towards the lone grave elder like a frightened dog running towards its master. The three elders gathered together and slowly adjusted their spiritual qi. None of them had any intentions of fighting anymore, as they understood that since he had already taken action, there was no need for them anymore. When they thought back to their clash on the Green Vine Mountain, they could not help but sigh. Is there anything else you want to say? Whatever, it's all nonsense. There's no point in saying more. Just like how the soaring dragon elder had been in the past, Fu Qingjin swung down with his sword. The streak of light was like a streak of green, deep green. It was like a green eye had opened up in the air, absorbing all of their minds. It contained endless sighs of emptiness, recounting the vicissitudes of life and the vicissitudes of life. No matter how glorious a civilization was, there would be a day when it would wither away. No matter how powerful an empire was, it would not be able to avoid the fate of destruction. It would only serve as a place for future generations to mourn. What were the measly creatures that existed there? Little Anne had waited patiently for a very long time, sacrificing all the steel plate corpses to bait the enemy. She stabbed out with her full strength, but all she got was praise from him. Her swordsmanship changed. Sometimes it was light and agile, sometimes it was heavy and solid, and sometimes it was unfathomable. Xiao and pushed the swordsmanship she had learned from the cursive sword calligraphy to the limit. She infused all of it into her sword, coupled with the fact that every single strike was a desperate attack that would take her down with her. It made her even more powerful. Fu Qingjin did not use the sword manipulation technique either. He wielded a sword in one hand and used his sword style, clashing with Little Anne. He wanted to see her sword style. Little Anne advanced, and her sword moves changed to the limit. Fu Qingjin retreated, slashing horizontally and vertically, but he was able to block Little Anne's sword moves every single time. In a single moment, the two swords clashed 1,000 times, producing a strange, drawn-out hum. Countless strands of sword qi shot out in all directions. Wherever the two of them passed by, dust would fill the air. Along the way, a relatively intact building collapsed loudly. Its structure had been completely destroyed by the sword chi, collapsing under its own weight. Countless cracks appeared on little Anne's white-bone sword. She only attacked and did not defend. If she were made of flesh and blood, she would have been shattered by the sword chi already. Li Qingshan roared at Millipede, "Return to your original form." The advantage that came with his colossal body had already vanished. He had no chance of winning this battle. He had to flee. However, everything before him had been enveloped by illusions. Let alone the tunnel, he could not even find the pit. If he wanted to flee, he could only charge through the illusions first, but that was easier said than done. This time, Millipede did not listen to him. His body trembled, and he charged at Fu Qingjin again. Every one of his movements was as ferocious as thunder, but Fu Qingjin relied on his strange light transformation technique. No matter how many times he attacked, it was useless. As expected, Fu Qingjin's body turned into a stream of light, once again gathering in the air. He shook his head and said, "Idiot!" little and fell from the sky, exhausted. Li Qingshan caught her. "No, this won't do. I have to think of something." Chapter 253. At this moment, Millipede opened his mouth, and a pink demon core shot into the sky. Like a pink bolt of lightning, it tore through the empty world of darkness. Most of Fu Qingjin's body had already gathered together. He stared at the pink demon core on his chest. This was originally his greatest objective. The perfectly round demon core twisted and deformed, and his expression finally changed. There was also some disbelief. "Run!" Millipede turned around and glanced at Li Qingshan again. His eyes had never been so clear before. He had thought of something that Li Qingshan had never thought of before. Dazzling light rushed into the sky. The crystallization of thousands of years had been unleashed in a single moment. Even the sun seemed to dim. The green ruins were torn to pieces, revealing the original pit. However, it had been forcefully widened by 10 times in the violent explosion. Only at this moment did the explosion ring out. The circular shockwave flattened all the vegetation within 100 kilometers. Li Qingshan roared at the sky, but his voice was drowned out by the rumble. Hua Sengzan stood on a paper crane and rushed into the air with Yu Zijian and Hua Chenglu. The paper crane was immediately torn to pieces by the shockwave. The 3 elders unleashed their defensive techniques and spiritual artifacts in fear, but the light immediately swallowed them up. The light vanished with a flash, but it was deeply imprinted in everyone's eyes. Just now it had vanished. Everything on the ground had been flattened. Everyone had vanished. Hua Sengzan was stunned for a very long time. Not only had he underestimated the Sword Collection Palace's strength, but he had also underestimated the demon general's decisiveness. Blowing up their demon core was equivalent to suicide. To all demons, survival was their first instinct, no matter how dangerous the situation was. There was a 1 in a million chance that they might be able to escape if they fought to the death, but blowing up their demon core would truly destroy all hope. The 3 elders emerged from the soil. Their clothes were tattered, blood sprayed from their mouths, and they collapsed on the ground. Shock remained on their faces. The Green Vine elder called out, "Fellow Fu! Fellow Fu!" A streak of green light descended from above. Fu Qingjin was covered in dust. His hair was slightly disheveled, and his face was pale. He had suffered internal injuries as well. Fu Qingjin looked at the basin where the Yao core had exploded. He was a little impressed, but at the same time, he was also a little surprised that an insect species that only acted on instinct could be so decisive. It was really unexpected. The demon is already dead. He disregarded the alliance and drilled out of the ground, seeking his own death. I hope the three of you can testify for him." The three elders agreed in a hurry. Fu Qingjin glanced at Hua Sengzan in the sky. Hua Sengzan asked, "Are those monsters really dead?" Fu Qingjin said, "It's not a big deal that two little demons escaped." Hua Sengzan said, "I don't think those two are ordinary monsters." Fu Qingjin said, "They do have some tricks up their sleeves. If they are willing to obediently stay underground and cultivate, then it's fine. But if they dare to come up to the surface and stir up trouble, you will be killed and die a horrible death." Hua Sengzan remained silent. He knew that he had the confidence to say such words. Although the two demons were strong, they were not weak. If they did not take that step, they would not be able to threaten him at all. And with the speed at which demons cultivated, taking that step might even take a century. By then, who knew how much Fu Qingjin's strength would have grown? Why would he be afraid of revenge? "Fu Qingjin, I will definitely kill you personally. And you three old coots, stay alive and wait for me." At this moment, a voice rang out from the depths of the ground. It passed through the thick layer of earth and reached everyone's ears clearly. The voice was so calm, but they could clearly sense the rage the owner of the voice was forcefully suppressing. It gave off a sense of chilliness. The expressions of the three elders all changed. Even the green vine elder, who had always been gentle, burst into rage. Reckless demons. Only Fu Qingjin's expression remained the same. He stabbed down with his sword, and a streak of light pierced the earth. The three elders looked at Fu Qingjin together. Fu Qingjin shook his head. "He's already gone." The three elders were disappointed at the same time. Fu Qingjin frowned. "Don't tell me the three of you are afraid?" The golden pheasant elder cried out. "How is that possible?" The three of them looked at one another. None of them were willing to admit the faint fear in their hearts. In the endless, gloomy underground, Li Qingshan said nothing. He ran as fast as he could. His eyes were wide open, and he gritted his teeth so hard that the smell of blood oozed out. He held Millipede in his hand, but he had already shrunk to around a foot in length. He had reverted to his original form. His body was in tatters, and he did not move at all. Little and followed behind him quickly, but he had no idea how to persuade him. When the demon core exploded, Millipede fell out of the air, and his body rapidly shrank, reduced to this state. A ball of fire seemed to burn in Li Qingshan's heart, scorching him to the point where his entire body ached. He forced himself to calm down, but he could not do it no matter what. He was clearly in a hurry, but the path before him kept changing. It was like a maze with no exit. The sea of flowers grew in the vast underground. The blue butterfly flowers bloomed brilliantly like clusters of blue flames. Li Qingshan passed through the sea of flowers and placed Millipede on the stone platform. This was his favorite bed. The spiritual chi on it might be able to help him. Then he took out all the healing pills from his 100 treasures pouch, applying them externally and ingesting them all on Millipede. However, Millipede only lay on the stone platform without moving. Li Qingshan's hopeful gaze gradually dimmed. He let out a wild roar at the sky, but all he saw was the pitch-black rock formation. His voice echoed through the cavern, but no one could hear it. He felt like he had returned to the ice sword cliff. He had naively thought he had broken through the cycle of rebirth, but as it turned out, nothing had changed. He raised his head and stood in front of the stone platform, his scarlet hair falling down to cover his face. He looked like a stone statue that had stood there for thousands of years. After an unknown amount of time, Little N's cold, bony claws caressed Li Qingshan's face. Li Qingshan's heart warmed slightly, and he said quietly, "Little N, why am I so weak?" No, it's because your enemy is too strong. You've only just begun cultivating. In the future, you will definitely be stronger than everyone else. At this moment, there was a flash of light on the stone platform, and an extremely soft hiss could be heard. Under Li Qingshan's disbelieving gaze, Millipede rolled on the ground and moved his 1,000 feet to crawl up. He propped himself up and waved his antennae at Li Qingshan as if he was greeting him. Li Qingshan hurriedly brought him up to his eyes. You're still alive. Millipede nodded and used the remaining weak demonic chi on his body to express, I'm playing dead. Li Qingshan's lips curled up and then drooped down. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but his heart seemed to relax. He sat down on the ground. Millipede said again, I'm hungry. Li Qingshan hurriedly placed a pile of food in front of Millipede. Millipede immediately buried his head in the food. Heavy and noisy footsteps rang out in the surroundings. At some point, the demonic soldiers had gathered around and were whispering among themselves. What happened to the king? He charged out without thinking and fell into the human's trap. He's done for. It looks like there's going to be a new king in this place. Li Qingshan suddenly turned his head, and the demonic soldiers immediately fell silent. Li Qingshan regained his composure. After a moment of thought, he sat on the stone platform and began to issue orders. The king has only suffered some minor injuries. Now, present everything and begin to calculate the merits. The demonic soldiers brought out the 100 treasures pouches and various spirit artifacts and talismans they had collected, let alone the assortment of spiritual artifacts. There were actually over 1,100 treasures pouches piled up into a small hill. Even Li Qingshan had not expected this, so he asked around. And found out that apart from the herb gathering ceremony this time, many human cultivators had entered the underground and died in the mouths of demonic soldiers. The spirit artifacts and 100 treasures pouches they had on them had a spiritual glow, and the demonic soldiers liked them. Although they didn't know their uses, they still collected them. Other regions wouldn't have so many 100 treasures pouches either. The other demon generals had managed their territories very well, so very few chi practitioners would go to their deaths. It was precisely because of Millipede's carelessness that this region had always been a battleground between humans and demonic soldiers. There were many spoils of war there. However, these spoils had no practical use to the demons. They had all been used to exchange for abundant food this time. Even though most of them were the 100 treasures pouches of weaker chi practitioners, it was still an extremely great sum of wealth. Li Qingshan was elated. He thought about it calmly. If it were not for his presence, Millipede would have been lured out of the ground. Even if he blew up his demon core, he would not have been able to escape death. Now that he was still alive, endless possibilities existed. He could make up for his lost cultivation, and he could take revenge for the hatred he had sown. It was very difficult, but it did not mean that nothing had changed. He was closing the distance between him and his opponent bit by bit. He had also saved his friend's life. However, he had only cultivated for a little over a year now. If he still felt sorry for himself and sighed dejectedly, what kind of man would he be? The three elders, Fu Qingjin. Humph! He suddenly clenched his fist. If he didn't get his revenge, he would cease to be human. No, he would cease to be a demon. These 100 treasures pouches were the source of his power. At this moment, Millipede said, I have one too. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He never thought Millipede would have 100 treasures pouch as well. However, it did make sense when he thought about it. It had been so many years, so why had no one managed to make their way here? The blue butterfly flowers were a crucial main ingredient for refining true spirit pills. They were startlingly valuable enough for people to risk their lives for them. Coupled with Milliped's habit of hibernating, it gave people even more opportunities to take risks. Many powerful chi practitioners had come for the blue butterfly flowers in the herb-gathering ceremony of the 3 mountains this time. Millipede raised his body and pointed out a direction like a compass. Li Qingshan dug down in a corner of the cavern. Sure enough, he dug up a pile of 100 treasures pouches, as well as a few shining spiritual artifacts. None of them were lower than mid-grade. It was impossible for someone to steal food from the jaws of a tiger without some strength. Without strength, it would have been impossible for them to pass through the gloomy cavern and arrive so deep underground. However, no matter how powerful they were still chi practitioners. Unfortunately, Millipede woke up in the middle of his sleep and saw people walking around in his home stealing his food. He caught them and used them as a snack. The things of these people obviously could not be eaten, so he just dug a hole and buried them before going back to sleep. As promised, Li Qingshan took out all the food and distributed it to the demons according to their contribution before dispersing first. Chapter 254. Li Qingshan wasn't in the mood to go through all of them in detail. He skimmed through them briefly until he had an idea. At that moment, Li Qingshan opened a strange-looking 100 treasures pouch. He discovered that it didn't contain spirit artifacts or spirit stones, but many poisonous insects like scorpions and centipedes. Among cultivators, there was no lack of ways to control insects and refine corpses. However, ordinary 100 treasures pouches couldn't be used to store living creatures. Therefore, the disciples of Burial Mound Mountain used special copper rings to control corpses, and this was a rare insect pouch. Li Qingshan released one of the poisonous scorpions. The scorpion was reddish-brown in color and was obviously huge. It was the size of an adult, shocking even Li Qingshan. The huge scorpion was brandishing its pincers, baring its fangs and claws. When it saw Millipede, it immediately cowered and tried to escape. Millipede shrank his body and shot out like an arrow, burrowing into the huge scorpion's body. The huge scorpion struggled a few times, then rolled over and died. Millipede ate all of the scorpion's flesh, leaving only an empty shell. Then he burrowed out again, his mandibles crisscrossing as he chirped happily. Suddenly, Li Qingshan had an idea. He released all the poisonous insects at once. Some flew, some crawled, and some jumped. Millipede released a pink poisonous mist that enveloped all the poisonous insects. They fell to the ground, and he ate them one by one. If there really was a way to raise goo, Millipede would be the goo king. These poisonous insects were far from him. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Millipede was a demon general. After all, with some time, he would definitely recover his original strength. Li Qingshan finally made up his mind. Then he began to catch butterflies in the cave. 3 days later, Li Qingshan was fishing for aquatic plants in the water. Suddenly, he heard a demon soldier report, "Leader, bad news. Demons from the west are coming." Another demon soldier hurried over. "They're coming from the east as well. And the south. Same for the north." Li Qingshan calmly straightened his body. They came so quickly. The 4 demon nests were all located at the borders of Millipede's territory and the other demon generals' territories. He had them keep an eye on the movements of the surrounding demon generals. What happened to Millipede could not be hidden from his old neighbors. There was no law or order underground. The strong were revered. Now that Millipede had lost his power, these demon generals would definitely come to fight for his territory, even if a demon commander came. No one could defy this law. Li Qingshan returned to Milliped's cave after harvesting the last handful of seaweed. The number of blue butterflies flying in the air had decreased a lot. The beautiful sea of flowers dimmed. He had already plucked all the mature blue butterfly flowers that could be used as medicine and placed them in the jade box in his 100 treasures pouch. More accurately speaking, he and Little N had swept through all the mature spirit herbs in the territory. Romance novel? Picking these spiritual herbs was not as easy as one would imagine. Many of them had to use special tools and pay attention to the picking method. For example, this blue butterfly flower, it would destroy the medicinal properties of the medicine. So he had to wear a special kind of golden silk glove. Fortunately, he did not lack these tools in his 100 treasures pouch. The demon soldiers had already gathered in front of the stone platform. All of them were nervous and uneasy, although they did not dare to defy the orders of Li Qingshan, the leader of the demon soldiers. Fighting against demons was not like fighting against humans. There were demon generals among them. Without a demon general, their side would definitely lose. Li Qingshan glanced past the demons, and the restless demons all settled down, waiting for his orders quietly. After going through the trials again and again, Li Qingshan's bearing that was as heavy as a mountain was gradually honed. He gradually became more and more capable of commanding the demons through strength and profit. Everyone, now that the demon generals are attacking from all 4 directions, they want to take over this territory. King Millipede is injured, and I do not have the power to stop them. The vice commander and I will temporarily take King Millipede away to find a place to heal. Li Qingshan did not hide anything or lie. He spoke openly and without reservation. Ribbit, ribbit. Leader, where are you going? What should we do? The ice frog asked as it hopped around. Everyone, just wait here to surrender. But remember, you must be united. No matter which side wants to take over this territory, they will need your strength. There were rules among the demon soldiers. As long as they did not resist to the death, the demon generals could not kill the demons. However, the invasion of external forces would inevitably harm the interests of the natives. But as long as they were united, they would play an important role in the war to divide up the territory. The demon soldiers had also tasted the benefits of being united. During the herb gathering ceremony, it was common to hear that a few demon soldiers had been killed in their nests, but this time only a few weak demon soldiers had died. They also had delicious food to eat. Seeing that Li Qingshan was leaving, they were a little reluctant. Li Qingshan brought Little and with him and walked out of the cave. The demon soldiers parted to form a path. Millipede was sleeping in the bug pouch. After losing his demon core, he was driven by his instincts. He could eat and sleep, and his emotions were not affected at all. If it were him, he would be depressed for a while after losing his demon core, and his strength greatly decreased. He could only lament that demon soldiers were blessed. Are you coming back? The boulder viper could not help but ask when Li Qingshan arrived at the entrance of the cave. This was the question all the demons wanted to ask as well. Of course. Very soon. Please wait a moment. Li Qingshan waved his hand without even looking back. A butterfly of blue light flew across his eyes. It was slightly dim, but it was still as beautiful as a dream. Li Qingshan only took the relatively older spiritual herbs. He did not touch the younger ones, and he mostly harvested them. He did not touch the roots, as he would return sooner or later to take back the territory for Millipede and himself. The roars and roars of the demons rang out from an extremely distant cave. It was time to leave. In the boundless mountains, at the foot of an inconspicuous hill, Li Qingshan pushed aside the withered vines and emerged. The cold wind blew against his face, giving him a refreshing feeling. Drink some tea. Old son, why do you seem so worried? As it turned out, Sun Fubai was among them as well. When he thought of Li Qingshan or Niu Juxia, he became worried. Although they had only met briefly, he had a very good impression of him. They had almost become good friends. He took a sip of tea. I'm worried about the safety of a young friend. I wonder how he is. Little Zhang was the cleverest. He smiled. You must be talking about that Niu Juxia. Sun Fubai was surprised. How did you know? Lu Ziyu said, there's nothing in this town that can escape his donkey ears. You're too kind, Elder Lu. A few days ago, he killed the first senior brother of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain, so various pieces of news flowed into his ears. It's impossible for me to not know about it. I even remember how many cups of tea he drank at your place. He really is quite the figure. Humph, I think he'll be done for. Everyone turned around and saw Lu Ruping, who stood to one side. Her eyes were filled with anger. Ever since she heard that the first senior brother of the Pheasant's Grace Mountain had died to Niu Juxia's hands and that he had escaped from the Golden Pheasant Elder, she had been unable to eat or sleep in peace ever since. She was afraid that he would learn about her role in all of this and come back for revenge. As time passed, she actually developed a sense of hatred towards him. Why didn't you just die? What kind of man were you to flee when you saw a master? Little Zhang was surprised. Ruping, how did he offend you? Lu Ruping was immediately left speechless. Not only had Niu Juxia not offended her, but he had even allowed her to profit for free. Chapter 255. Lu Ruping's expression changed slightly, but she was afraid to talk back to Sun Fubai. She moved to another table. Ha! Li Qingshan made little and wait outside as he passed through the town alone. The ancient structures in the surroundings folded and deformed like futuristic technology in movies, as if they had suddenly sprung to life. He arrived outside the store of miscellaneous goods. The door was wide open, and light poured out, illuminating the dark streets. Li Qingshan heard a few familiar voices, as well as Lu Ruping's words. He raised an eyebrow, but he did not feel any intense anger. All he did was find a secluded corner and wait quietly. The opportunity had arrived faster than he had imagined it to be. A few hours later, the entire town closed up. Only the small building of the store of miscellaneous goods remained, standing alone. Afterwards, it also began to deform. The cultivators all emerged from the store of miscellaneous goods. The last one to emerge was a stout, old woman who was the owner of the store, Shi Peipei. Originally, there would always be a gathering every time the market closed up, but after this incident, everyone lost interest. In the end, the entire town of Flowing Clouds shrank into a small, rectangular piece of wood, landing in Shi Peipei's hand. She stowed it away in her 100 treasures pouch and took out a small, wooden ship. She tossed it into the air, and it expanded 100 times, hovering in the air. I want to return to the Clear River City to report what happened here to the school leader. If you want to go to the Clear River City, please board the ship. If you have other matters to attend to, please handle them yourself. Please forgive me for not seeing you off. The next market of the town of Flowing Clouds is in the 3rd month of spring, when the 100 schools of thought hold their entrance examination. Sacred Hall, the white sails unfurled, and the wind surged. The ship was like a drifting leaf, flying into the night sky. A while later, it became as insignificant as a speck of dust, sailing into a cloud and vanishing. Only a dozen or so people remained on the empty wasteland, gazing at this sight before lowering their heads and bidding farewell to each other. Li Qingshan was one of them. Although he had witnessed many of the wonders and mysteries of this world, he would still sigh in amazement every time he saw it again. Then he lowered his head and gazed in the direction that Lu Ruping had departed in. Like a wild beast, he leapt into the darkness. In the depths of the ground, the demons were huddled together, colliding and roaring as they bared their fangs and claws in an attempt to force the other party to retreat. If it were humans, it would definitely turn into a chaotic battle with corpses strewn all over the place. After all, they were creatures that would speak rudely just because of a glance, curse loudly, and stab each other to death. Furthermore, the intelligence of demons was not enough for them to develop a complex concept like dignity. Anger was not worth mentioning in the face of survival. If there was a great battle, no matter which side won, they would lose at least half of their demon soldiers. Even their own lives might be threatened. What kind of idiot would choose to start a war? Humans. Therefore, the 4 demon generals all chose to negotiate. However, the method of negotiation might seem very barbaric to humans. There was no lack of physical contact, claws, and teeth. Holy church among the group of demons, there were 4 demon generals with different appearances. They were constantly increasing the demon chi on their bodies. Suddenly, a demon soldier from an unknown faction came to report in a fluster. "Your Majesty, they're coming down." Before he finished speaking, 8 lantern-sized eyes suddenly lit up in the dark cave. Each eye was filled with unimaginable cruelty and viciousness. After several months, he had finally returned to Jiaping City. Li Qingshan changed into the Black Wolf uniform and equipped his wind-entwining blade. Little An had also returned to human form and changed into a new set of clothes. Li Qingshan held Little An's little hand and walked towards Jiaping City. For the first time in several months, he slowed down. On both sides of the road, the snow had not melted yet. The buildings on both sides gradually became denser and taller, and everywhere was decorated with lanterns. This made Li Qingshan suddenly remember that it was the new year. Calculating the time, he had grown another year, becoming 17. The crowing of roosters resounded throughout the city. Plumes of smoke rose into the sky, shrouding the entire city in a green mist. What was he doing when he was 17 in his previous life? He was still studying in school, going through a boring and monotonous high school life. Now, he was a vicious demon with thousands of lives on his hands. He had to admit that the latter kind of life was more interesting. Perhaps there would be people who would lament that being ordinary was the truth, or perhaps they would miss the peaceful life of the past. Li Qingshan had no such emotions. He would rather take greater risks and abandon even more morals in order to obtain such an interesting life. At the foot of the mountain, Li Qingshan looked up at the Iron Eagle and climbed up the stairs. Chapter 256. In the gloomy underground, the atmosphere was as cold as ice. The ice frog hopped around and told them everything that had happened. This was related to the coldness he gave off unconsciously. From the beginning to the end, the lady in red had no expression on her face. Her beautiful face was like an exquisite mask. Her pair of beautiful eyes, however, seemed to flash with a malicious light, causing people to shudder. After listening to everything, she turned around and left. Her scarlet dress trailed behind her. A large, dark-skinned man with a beard that resembled a halberd asked loudly, how do we split the territory?" "I'll naturally split it up later. It'll be up to you when the time comes." When she reached there, the corner of her lips curled up. An enchanting smile appeared on her icy cold face, but it was like colorful venom. The 4 demon generals all shivered inside. They immediately made up their minds to split up the territory as soon as possible and stop arguing over the details. Otherwise, with this Am's personality, a peaceful negotiation would definitely turn into a bloody slaughter. It was not for any special reason, just because she liked it. Not only did her preference for bloodshed and cruelty exceed the survival instincts of demons, but even humans paled in comparison. The ice frog said, "Croak, croak, great King Millipede is still alive." The leader said he'll return. "He's dead," she said without any room for doubt. She glanced past all the demons as if she wanted to engrave those 3 words into their hearts like a decree. A demon general who had lost his demon core was no different from death. She did not feel any sorrow for that useless idiot. Instead, she saw an opportunity. "I will avenge him." Her bright, venomous smile appeared on her face again, merging with the darkness. On the green vine mountain, in the main hall, there was silence. Fu Qingjin sat in front of the hall with his legs crossed. Moonlight spilled down from the steps. Gazing at the mountains in the distance, the green ruins sword rested on his knees, silent and unmoving. He was waiting quietly for the news of the herb-gathering ceremony of the 3 mountains to spread in all directions, waiting for it to brew. The 3 elders sat close behind him in the dark hall. They seemed rather uneasy. The green vine elder said, "Fellow Fu, will there really be demons coming for revenge?" The golden pheasant elder said, "Why would these wretched demons dare? They were clearly the ones who broke the treaty first and caused trouble above ground." The green vine elder said, "Do you want to avoid them for now?" The lone grave elder said, "Yes." When the anger from his disciples' death cooled down, fear began to envelop his heart. They would definitely launch a large-scale attack. They were already very old and were beginning to fear death. With his back facing them, Fu Qingjin's lips curled into a mocking smile, but he patiently explained, "I'll stay here. It is to guard against such situations. Look at the demon execution medallion in your hands. How can we cultivators cower in the face of the threat of demons?" The 3 elders were taken aback. He lowered his head and looked at the small token in his hand. It was neither gold nor jade. It flickered with a dim light, and the words "Demon Slayer" were carved on it. He couldn't help but think back to 3 days ago. As soon as the battle had ended, Fu Qingjin took out the 3 medallions and invited the 3 of them to join the Demon Slayer. With the Sword Collection Palace as the core, they would unite the various righteous sects and recruit ambitious human cultivators to purge demons and demons together. Preparations were currently underway, and the 3 of them would become founding members. The 3 of them were currently consumed by extreme hatred towards demons, and there were many benefits to joining the alliance. The Sword Collection Palace shared high-level cultivation methods and secret information. If they performed meritorious service in purging demons, they would be rewarded with spiritual artifacts and pills. Fu Qingjin promised to ask for meritorious service for the 3 of them when he returned this time, helping the 3 mountains rebuild their sect. The 3 of them immediately agreed and accepted the medallion. Afterwards, Fu Qingjin began to wait here for the demons' revenge. The 3 of them became more and more uneasy. They had witnessed the terror of demons during their battle with Millipede. They did not possess strength like Fu Qingjin. Even a demon general could take their lives if they blew up their demon core without any regard for the consequences. And why would the underground world be stupid enough to send a demon general to his death? If they did, it would be a group of powerful demons or even greater. By then, they would not even know how they died. However, it was already too late for regrets. They had joined the Demon Slayer, so they obviously had to follow the Demon Slayer's orders. If they wanted to back out now, did they really think the Sword Collection Palace was a joke? Before the demons' revenge, Fu Qingjin could destroy them right now. The measly demon suppression medallion became hotter and hotter. The reinforcements of our Sword Collection Palace are already on the way. Only with what Fu Qingjin said. Next did the 3 elders ease up slightly. They looked at one another and were all bitter. That was all they could do. However, there were no reinforcements at all. Fu Qingjin shook his head gently. Cherishing one's body when doing great things, forgetting one's life at the sight of small benefits. Rottenwood could not be carved. He remained here, so that these 3 pieces of rottenwood could unleash their remaining light and warmth. With the green ruin sword in hand, he was confident he could escape even if a demon commander came in person. Not only had the demons mercilessly slaughtered all the disciples of the 3 mountains underground, but they had even broken the treaty and charged out of the surface, massacring everyone. In the end, he had slain them. However, that was not enough. The deranged demons came for revenge very soon. They killed the sect masters of the 3 mountains, and he had to risk his life to escape. A large part of his patience right now was the patience he had for people who were about to die, for these 3 martyrs and sacrifices. This was the plot that the Sword Collection Palace had arranged. Fu Qingjin was only an absent-minded main character, just like a master of chess. A single move would definitely contain more than just a single objective. It would definitely contain a series of subsequent changes as well. At this moment, Fu Qingjin suddenly raised his head and furrowed his brows. Hua Sengzan was currently making his way up the stairs with Hua Qinglu and Yu Zijian beside him. Fu Qingjin said, "You haven't left yet?" Hua Sengzan smiled. "Why would I leave? The town below is about to close, so I have nowhere to go. I just happen to want to stay on the Green Vine for a few days." "Then you shouldn't have come again. You even brought them with you." Fu Qingjin only looked at Yu Zijian. Originally, he wanted to take her back to the Sword Collection Palace after this matter was over, but he never expected something to happen again. It would obviously be easy for him to escape, but if he had to protect a weaker Qi practitioner at the same time, it would be extremely difficult. He had to get her to leave the mountain as soon as possible. Hua Sengzan had been observing Fu Qingjin's expression the entire time, which made him even more certain of his conjecture. He smiled. "Don't worry. What you're worried about won't happen." "What?" "She's already here." Hua Sengzan pointed at the sky. Fu Qingjin raised her head, but all she saw were clouds, the moon, and the stars. However, she already understood what he was referring to. The Rui Commandery was her territory. She should have known things would not be so simple a long time ago. She moved through the caves. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. The moonlight that she had not seen in a very long time was right before her, but she could not help but stop. Under the moonlight, a woman in white leaned against the wall, standing with her arms in her sleeves. "Gu Yenying." She frowned. "Luo, long time no see." Gu Yenying greeted her with a smile. She was as relaxed as running into her next-door neighbor on the way out in the morning. Chapter 257. Don't block my way. Her long, scarlet dress began to dance, and she turned into a red light as Lolth dashed out of the cave. A white shadow flashed, and Gu Yenying blocked in front of her, her hair dancing in the wind. "Forgive me for not being able to comply." Lolth immediately turned, changing directions 100 times in an instant, but was blocked by the white shadow every time. In an instant, a red light filled the cave and circled around it. A white shadow seemed to appear at every corner of the cave at the same time, forming an impenetrable wall. In the blink of an eye, the two returned to the distance, as if they had never moved. Lolth opened her red lips and spat out a thread of spider silk, which turned into a huge spider web in the air, trapping Gu Yenying. Gu Yenying didn't move at all. A small whirlwind rose beside her, and her clothes fluttered. This kind of small whirlwind was common even among mortals. At most, it could only blow up a few withered leaves. But the spider silk, which was 100 times stronger than steel, was silently torn to pieces upon contact with this wind. Astral wind! Loltha's pupils shrank, and she became even angrier. She let out a strange, shrill cry, and her body began to change. Her dress rose up, and her lower body became that of a black spider. Her long and sharp legs and her large belly were covered in colorful stripes that spread to her upper body. Her snow-white skin also became dark, and her eyes glowed. With a sharp, raspy voice, she said, "Are you going to move or not? Don't forget, half of your blood is demon." Gu Yenying said, "It's precisely because I have half demon blood that I have to stop you. This is the Dragon King's order." "Dragon King? You want to use the Dragon King to scare me?" Lolth suddenly bent down, and her face was very close to Gu Yenying's. The two beautiful faces were almost touching, one devilishly beautiful, the other confident and calm. Who doesn't know that the Eagle God and the Dragon King are like fire and water? The Eagle God is the Eagle God, and I am me. Demons still get along. Right, he even gave me this. Gu Yenying took out an item. It was a black dragon carved from an unknown material. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, looking very majestic. Black Dragon Talisman. What an old-fashioned name. Gu Yenying pursed her lips. However, he said that anyone who sees this item is like seeing him in person. The demons of Qingzhou will obey his orders. Rose said in disbelief, "That's impossible. Why would the Dragon King give the Ink Dragon Talisman to someone like you?" Rose, step down. The Ink Dragon Talisman suddenly came to life and coiled around him. A dignified voice rang out, issuing an order. Loltha's entire body trembled, and her body gradually shrank until she returned to human form. She bowed down and said respectfully, "Yes, Dragon King." She looked at Gu Yenying with reluctance, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. Gu Yenying flicked the Ink Dragon Talisman. "Uncle, are we still going to continue to endure?" The Black Dragon Talisman was silent and motionless. Even its eyes were closed. Gu Yenying said, "All right." Her figure flashed and disappeared. On the top of the Green Vine Mountain, Gu Yenying descended from above and landed on the top of the hall silently. Her gaze was like a hawk's, landing on Fu Qingjin's back brightly. Fu Qingjin let out a leisurely sigh and stood up. He turned around and clasped his hands. "Thank you for your trouble, Commander Gu." There was no regret or dissatisfaction at all. "Greetings to Lady Gu, Green Vine, Golden Pheasant, and Lonely Grave." The three elders eased up inside and bowed in a hurry. They did not dare to take advantage of their seniority at all. Yu Zijin blurted out, "So beautiful." Hua Qinglu raised her head and thought, "I'd like to see just what this Gu Yenying looks like." Under the radiant moon, her clothes were even whiter than snow, her wide sleeves ruffling in the wind. Her beauty was alluring. As a woman as well, she could not help but sigh in admiration. However, if that was all, there was nothing special about her. Who knew how many beauties Hua Qinglu had seen throughout her life, but they all had their own merits. She had heard that divine physicians could alter a person's appearance, allowing them to become as beautiful as they wanted. However, her beauty was incomparable. Turning around, she saw Hua Sengzan staring at her, as expected. Suddenly, she remembered what he had once said, "If you see her in person, perhaps you'll be able to understand me." Hua Qinglu was reluctant, but she could not help but begin to understand. Even if her appearance was nothing special, he would still be infatuated by her. "Little Hua, this must be your younger sister." Gu Yenying drifted down and studied Hua Qinglu. Her smile was like a spring breeze. Hua Qinglu struggled to hold any grudges. "Qinglu greets Lady Gu. My brother has mentioned you quite a lot. You're not as good as your reputation. Gu Yenying teased. Hua Qinglu reddened and lowered her head. You're right. You're not as good as your reputation. Hua Sengzan snickered. It's more or less the same. Gu Yenying said, Your Zijian. You know my name? I've also heard little Hua mention you. Gu Yenying studied Yu Zijian. Her gaze seemed to be able to see right through her. Yu Zijian could only be regarded as having some talent, not some extraordinary talent. However, Gu Yenying did not doubt Hua Sengzan's judgment. Her understanding of the Sword Collection Palace was much deeper than Hua Sengzan's. Her sharp instincts told her that this child would be the next master of the Violet Cloud sword. Gu Yenying only talked to them, ignoring Fu Qingjin and the three elders. The three elders' faces reddened, but they dared not lose their temper. Fu Qingjin smiled self-deprecatingly and lowered his hand. He did not feel awkward at all. He had caused trouble for others, so being ignored was unavoidable. Gu Yenying suddenly turned around and said to Fu Qingjin, You're still here? I'm going right now. If you want to go, then go. My head hurts whenever I see someone with a sword. Yu Zijian was innocent. Be good. I'm not talking about you. Before I came here, the palace master also asked me to pass on a message to Commander Gu. The difference between humans and demons is only a single thought. Please take care of yourself in the future. Commander, don't make a mistake. As Fu Qingjin said that, his bearing changed. All of his dispiritedness vanished, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. He possessed a stern bearing, as if he had not only brought the words of the palace master from thousands of kilometers away, but also his bearing. Pass on a message for me as well. If you want to cause trouble, please go somewhere else. The Green Province is very large. As long as the Treaty of Kings exists, I will maintain it. As for the future, we'll talk about it in the future. Gu Yenying's smile vanished completely. Her gaze was like a hawk's as she confronted him. Although the two of them did not use any spiritual qi at all, the people in the surroundings all felt pressured. Fu Qingjin eased up and returned to normal. I can't copy the palace master's appearance. I will definitely pass on Commander Gu's message. Afterwards, he said to Yu Zijian, Miss Yu, you have a destiny with the sword. Are you willing to come with me to the Sword Collection Palace to practice the path of the sword? His gaze was serious as he said sincerely, I've come this time, not for anything else, but for you. With that, the three elders were all shocked. The fated person of the Sword Collection Palace was not just a free meal falling from the sky. She was basically a ladder that had fallen from the sky. Even they were envious of her. Yu Zijian, who was originally the most inconspicuous and the weakest, immediately became the center of attention. She was at a loss as her face reddened. Apologies, I've already agreed to accompany Chenglu to the Book of the 100 Schools. Ugh, are you stupid? Hua Chenglu, who had been in a daze the entire time, returned to her senses and covered her mouth. That's the Sword Collection Palace. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.